Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the chairman.
And so, we're returning to item 4, Chairmens Business. There's still some business to complete. Officially, we have received the sad news of the deaths of former County Councillor Ken Bullivant. Mr. Bullivant represented Miston from 1989 to 2009 and was Vice Chairman of Planning and Licensing Committee from 2005 to 2009. So that means that Ken was a council councillor for 20 years. Ken was a really good representative for the area where he lived at that time, Beckham and Clayworth and Grinley. He was also a very popular councillor at Bassetlaw District Council. Ken Bullivant was known to members at this council as the Man from the North, a title which he acknowledged. And when it was cold, he was known as the Man, as it is now, as it was yesterday, the Man from the Frozen North. Very apt. During the last 8 years or so, Ken became a constituent of mine when he moved to North Leverton to be close to his daughter. Ken Bullivant liked to do things properly. Ken was a friend and colleague at the District Council. He is survived by his wife Barbara. I attended Ken Bullivant's funeral on behalf of this council. I now invite members to say a few words about former County Councillor Ken Bullivant. Vice Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I met Ken when I first became councillor in 2001. And at that time, as a new councillor, I really didn't know anyone apart from my immediate colleagues from Rushcliffe, as it happened, when we got elected. But straight away, he got this air about him that he was just there to... He's a nice guy, basically. He sort of told me who was who, where to go, and all the rest of it. Just a very, very kind gentleman. But what I really do remember about him, he had this air of grudgingly coming along to a meeting, almost as if to say, oh, well, I suppose I better go off to this meeting now then. But you could tell he enjoyed it, but he put this little act on, especially as he comes so far from the frozen north. And he also, it's funny how you remember these things, he always had a battered old brown leather briefcase with him, with all his council papers in, all careful. Well, I assume they probably weren't carefully arranged, but they were all in his briefcase. And then he just trudged along, meeting to meeting, and then as soon as the meeting was over, he'd be off back up to the frozen north. So yes, he's one of my earliest memories of being on this council, actually. So nice chap, and we obviously pass on best wishes to his family. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. The Chairman now calls upon Councillor Fielding.
Thank you, Chairman. Ken Bullivant, when he served as Vice Chairman to the Authority for Planning, I was Chairman of that committee, and I've got extremely fond memories of how supportive he was at that time. And also on site visits. I recall a site visit to West Burton Power Station with also ex-councillor Hemsel as well was on committee at the time, looking at how you get rid of pulverised ash. But as I say, he was an extraordinarily supportive vice chairman for planning, and an extraordinarily good councillor at supporting his community.
Thank you, Councillor Fielding. Chairman calls Councillor Foley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, not many of us here kind of remember Councillor Bullivan, but thank you to Councillor Fielding, who clearly did know him. Clearly had a long service, which I think we all kind of value and recognise. So our condolences to the councillor's family. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fowle. The Chairman calls on Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman. I rise to speak about Ken in a very personal way. I have the privilege of being his successor, serving Misterton Division, and slightly ironically, he was my county councillor for a time, and I was his county councillor later on. Interesting to hear him mentioned in our prayers, as was proper this morning, and reference being made to him having died in September, 1 week off his 98th birthday. This was a huge character who lived a long, very happy life, and also a very long life of service. He retired from this council in 2009, and Councillor Yates succeeded him for a period of 8 years. He had been a public servant since the mid-80s. So just for us to reflect on, for some people in this chamber I know have been here a long time, 25 odd years of public service to the people of Bassetlaw, to the people of Misterton, to the people of the county. If it's possible to say that I attended a good funeral service, I would have to say Ken's was that. It was sad for us to be there for those reasons, but it was an absolute celebration of life, of somebody who was clearly well loved, a real gentleman. I remember him as a bit of a rogue as well, I have to say. For those, certainly my Bassetlaw colleagues, for any of you who knew Councillor Jeff Rickles, he and Ken were, let's just say, mischievous, to say the least. And their time together was challenging at times, I will probably say. So to say that they were our elder statesmen, they were also very, very cheeky boys. So it was nice to see Barbara, his daughter Sue, and husband Colin, and to be able to enjoy their memories of his life. I'm privileged to be in the position I am now. I'll never fill those shoes.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I now intend to update the Council on business undertaken since the last meeting. While you all engaged with the September County Council meeting, I represented the County Council by attending Flintham Show, where Her Royal Highness Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, visited Flintham Show. Her Royal Highness, myself and Sally went on to visit the NSPCC offices and headquarters in the city. You will realise that the NSPCC is the Chairman's charity for this council year. Her Royal Highness toured the NSPCC premises, meeting the staff, and learned of the assistance given to children requesting help. The visit was enjoyed by all. Thank you to the Vice Chairman of the Council for chairing the September Council meeting in my absence. Thank you to all those that supported the Chairman's Harvest Supper. The venue was at Heaven Village Hall, was well supported by civic dignitaries, and our past chairman attended. £970 was raised. At a Christmas fair at the Old Bell, Retford, Sally ran a cake stall at which nearly £400 was raised. Running total for the Chairman's charity is over £4,000, and thank you all that have contributed today by buying tickets for the draw. I'd just like to thank Laura for buying a bottle for the draw at the last council meeting. She gave a bottle, so that's very generous of her. In the interim of council meetings, both myself and the Vice Chairman have attended to the regular citizenship ceremonies and social events, the various remembrance services, both here and in the county. The Chief Executive and myself attended the remembrance service on the city embankment on Remembrance Sunday. Several award events, evenings, children's awards, have been attended recently. I recently attended the University Vice Chancellor's reception, and the Vice Chairman attended the Inspire concert on that same evening. So thank you for the Chairman's business, and we move on to item 5, Constituency Issues. This item gives members who have previously given notice by the deadline the opportunity to speak up for up to 3 minutes on any particular matter relevant to their constituencies or any particular issues arising in their electoral division which is relevant to the services provided by the County Council. This is an opportunity simply to air these issues in the council meeting. It will not give rise to a debate on the issues or a question and answer session. Members are reminded that there is a maximum time limit of 15 minutes for this item on the agenda, and each member may only speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Any speeches not heard in the time limit will fall and can be submitted again at a future meeting. We have 9 speeches today. The Chairman calls upon Councillor Bruce Lawton regarding a young resident who benefited from SEND programme, now excelling in sports.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I shall be quite quick because obviously I want to get through this. SEND has obviously received quite a bit of negative publicity in this council over recent times. Alice Hopkins, one of my residents, has benefited from our SEND provision. She was born with 5% vision, and ironically the local councillor, Chris Rose, who was a Lib Dem local councillor for many years, used to provide Alice with piano lessons. She then went to Sutton-on-Trent Primary School, and our SEND provision provided the home with Velux windows so that they could increase the amount of light going into her house so that she could use her computer with large keys and see it readily. She then went to Tuxford Academy and received a first-class education from that school, along with the help from the SEND provision. Alice did her A-levels, and when she finished her A-levels, this council funded a year at the Hereford School for the Blind, run by the RNLI, which taught her how to live independently. She started playing football while she was there, and she is now doing a degree at Northampton University and is thriving. And to her credit, is captain of the England under-21 football team for the visually impaired girls. So the success for Alice has been a success both for the SEND of this authority and the provision that this council has helped the family in to be able to help her along the way, and also to Alice's intimidable spirit and her ability to be able to live with a disability and come out the other end flying with flying colours. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Lawton. The Chairman calls on Councillor Penny Gowland regarding residents barriers to access public transport in West Bridgford North.
Thanks very much. West Bridgford is an urban and almost in some places inner city area that has no town council, but is largely governed by people who live in villages or small towns. This leads to many oversights, particularly related to transport. First, the people of West Bridgford North, including me, the local councillor, were shocked to learn about a consultation from Nottinghamshire County Council for on-street parking for shoppers in our area through the media. The consultation says West Bridgford is a thriving town that attracts visitors from many miles around because of its unique retail experience and unrivaled sporting events. Residents would say West Bridgford is a tight residential community supporting a thriving high street and park with international sporting locations embedded in its periphery. The community does not want to be turned into a car park. As such, there simply isn't enough parking for residents in much of West Bridgford. People are frequently unable to park outside their own homes, and they have no off-street parking, and many buildings are HMOs. I ask councillors here who have off-street parking, imagine coming home in the slush this week and having to carry your shopping home and your children home and your bags home for 100 yards or more. Those people are more interested in how you're going to resolve their parking and public transport issues than how you're going to encourage yet more people to drive around West Bridgford. Secondly, the issues for residents living in West Bridgford is not how to park for the shops, but in dealing with appalling parking all over the streets and the pavements by drivers who are coming to football, cricket and shopping. People are seething that you should be insulting us by encouraging more people and more cars into West Bridgford rather than trying to deal with the problems we already have. I've been asking about this endlessly and received no real engagement from the council whatsoever. The football traffic is a nightmare. On-street parking for shoppers will cause us to suffer from more cars cruising around the area looking for space rather than less. Third, the people of West Bridgford have given up hope of ever being able to charge the EV cars if they don't have off-street parking. Nottingham County Council have dragged their feet in solving this problem. If changes to on-street parking were linked to EV charging, residents might be okay about it. Fourthly, many people in West Bridgford leave their cars at home during the day and travel to work by public transport and bus, and many live within walking distance of the tram stops. Many of the most vulnerable people in West Bridgford rely on the bus and tram passes to get access to the hospitals and many parts of Nottinghamshire and Nottingham, particularly as they are particularly accessible to people with disabilities. These passes are critical for people and also reduce parking and transport issues near the hospital. Many elderly residents have contacted me in some distress at the thought that they might lose this concession. This active consultation is upsetting people now. But as you know, Councillor Bradley has now told us he has no plans to remove these passes anyway, it won't be a matter for the County Council, so why are we having this consultation? Maybe he's actually listened to the campaigns and changed his mind. But either way, how much is this pointless consultation costing the councillors? My residents would like to know what else this money could have been spent on.
Thank you, Councillor Garland. The Chairman calls upon Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like many residents in Eastwood and Nottinghamshire, flooding has been a major problem throughout the years. I'm sure that many other areas are facing the same situation. Despite this, we've had planning applications after planning applications have been passed without little consideration of its impact on flooding. As I stated in the last full council meeting, this situation across the division of Eastwood is becoming desperate. Either that or Eastwood is having the worst year of its life. The last time I spoke in this chamber, I described the devastation caused by the major flooding incident that happened at 5 a.m. on Monday, September the 18th on Garden Road, Eastwood, as devastating and submerged the road and houses and driveways. I said at the meeting if there wasn't enough evidence to turn down the planning application at the former Lincroft School, then there certainly is now. How can it be right that Avon Homes can carry out groundworks without impunity? They caused the flooding, they built a huge reservoir behind the residents' houses, and this authority, may I mention the lead in the flood authority, did nothing but to nothing object. I hope the developers are fully compensating these residents and now withdraw their ridiculous plan. And I'll be speaking about Storm Babbitt later and the horrific situation faced by the residents on Friar Road, Rody Drive, Coach Drive, and situations which faced even myself submerged up to waist height in water. What I wanted to do, Mr. Chairman, is use this constituency speech to make a plea to this council to use their responsibilities as the lead flood authority seriously. When there is a planning application, we get the chance to make a recommendation to planning authorities like Broxton Borough Council. Often this opportunity perhaps isn't taken by this council. In this particular case, this council did not object to the planning application for over 100 houses on the site of the old Lincroft School in Eastwood, and I feel that this is a clear abdication of our responsibilities as the lead flood authority and puts residents in danger. So I ask this council to consider this, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the time to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. The Chairman calls upon Councillor Japson regarding traffic and highways access issues into Gunthorpe.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I rise to speak on behalf of the residents of Gunthorpe, who now find themselves totally isolated as a village because of the traffic going on the 6097 going over Gunthorpe Bridge, which has probably quadrupled over recent years in volume. Not only do the residents find it difficult to leave the village, but the local businesses are suffering as well. And the school is losing pupils because it can take up to 15 to 20 minutes to leave the village after you drop your child off at school. Daycare workers whose time is very precious and do not like visiting the village because of the time it disrupts their very tight schedules and their timetable, and often makes them late for their next visits. And with all the road and junctions and improvements being planned for the 614 and 6097 from Ollerton roundabout to Kirkhill in East Bridgeford, Gunthorpe will be the only village without any physical means of leaving it. All the other villages either have a roundabout or traffic lights to help the traffic leave their villages, and Gunthorpe will have absolutely nothing. It has to fight across the streams of traffic. There's been no accidents, I am told, when I keep applying, say, why can't we have traffic lights? But there are plenty of accidents, but only minor ones, small bumps, which do not get reported. But in the past history, this stretch of road did have a number of fatalities, which is the reason why the speed limit was dropped down from 50 to 40 miles per hour. And I do find it mind-boggling, Chairman, why people have to die before we react to road safety measures. So what am I asking for, Chairman, is that highways have a look at the village of Gunthorpe and the exits from Gunthorpe village while they are doing these improvements works. There's extra money, I'm told, for levelling up from HS2 available for these things, and try and make the life of the residents and the businesses of Gunthorpe a lot more easy, and so they're not always taking their life into their own hands when they're leaving the village. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. The Chairman calls on Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Chair. I raised to highlight the issues that have been raised with me by a number of residents living in Arnold South. And I go to the first email that I received from a lady called Grace, whose husband has a life-limiting illness. That means it's not necessarily terminal yet, but it's obviously getting worse over a number of months. Chair, in Arnold South, we're obviously just on the outskirts of the city, and therefore, often or not, people use the tram services from the Forest Recreation Ground to access the Nottingham University Hospital. You will know that Nottingham University Hospital, the Queen's Medical Centre, has hundreds, if not thousands, of outpatient appointments every week, and has many, many visitors on site, many of which use the tram from residents in Arnold South use that tram to get there. And the reason that they have to use the tram is also because the parking at the hospital, there isn't enough of the staff to park there, never mind anybody else. I'm in a very unfortunate position that I have to visit the hospital on a regular basis, but the person I'm taking isn't able to actually use the tram anymore. But when I did, it gave us easy access to those appointments. Chairman, a lot of these people that are accessing these appointments that have contacted me use a concessionary pass, because when you become ill with a life-limiting illness and you're no longer working and you only have your pension, for the vast majority of people that are on the pension in the ward that I serve, it's not a significant amount to me when you couple that with the cost of living and heating and etc. going up. So they've emailed me in complete shock that these changes are even being consulted on at a time like this, and they're genuinely concerned about how they're going to get to their appointments in the future. So this is a genuine plea from Nottinghamshire County Council to, one, perhaps consider lengthening how long the consultation is taking place, since it's going over the Christmas period and not everyone is going to be able to access, but actually just not to do this in the first place. I think the public uproar with regards to it is pretty evident. And last but certainly not least, if we are serious about combating health inequalities and ensuring that we have an economy fit for the future, the truth is, in the Nottingham University Hospital's travel plan, the tram plays a huge part of that. And actually, if you ask Nottingham University Sure, they're a key stakeholder in your consultation, given the amount of people that do use it. I'm sure they are. Given that and the amount of people that access appointments, cancer sufferers, lung disease, and heart attack, I ask that actually you stop what you were doing, halt it, and actually give those people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think as members will be aware, I represent the village of Huthwaite and also a very large chunk of Sutton Ashfield town centre, namely being Carsick Estate and the bit in between. We have thousands and thousands of car movements each and every day on Huthwaite Road and Alfreton Road. And also, with the recent drive, I think, of both the government and the councils to get people walking, we have a lot of pedestrians on both the pavements there. But sadly, both the pavements and the road on Huthwaite Road and Alfreton Road are in a terrible, terrible place. Often you see people tripping on the pavements. Huthwaite Road particularly is littered with potholes, and speeding is frankly out of control on both streets, particularly Alfreton Road, where people leave the A38 and then come in towards Sutton Town Centre. And I know we've had a few laughters from the Conservatives, but they weren't laughing when one of my constituents got run over and killed on Alfreton Road. Only 6 weeks ago. I've never been done for speeding, and I'd like that retracted. But 6 weeks ago, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to sit down until you control.
Thank you, Councillor Hollis.
Mr. Chairman, what I've just heard laughter about is one of my constituents getting killed.
Yeah,
and I
very
think
serious.
actually it's an absolute disgrace what's just happened there. But the reason I've chosen to raise these two roads is because of that fatality, and frankly, something will happen again until this county council does something to do something about it. I notice we've got a very able officer in Derek Hickton sat at the back, and I'd like him to take note, actually, when he's feeding back our council's responsibility to VIA, that actually we do prioritise getting the road maintained. It's a lot of bang for the buck that we'd get by resurfacing both those roads. We've just had two large developments passed on Alfreton Road, new housing. The developer has completely churned up the road outside their entrance by relaying some works. I'd like the county council to look at that, but particularly the pavement on Alfreton Road, which just falls into Councillor Deakin's division actually on the opposite side, is very narrow, no wider than a couple of foot, and that's where my resident got killed. And I'd like something looked about that for highway safety, but particularly bearing in mind the amount of usage we get on those two roads. I really feel that we'd get a lot of bang for the buck by taking steps to do something about the resurfacing works. I'm very grateful for some of the side work patching we've had, but the main roads are very important, Mr. Chairman, and I'd certainly like to see the County Council take some action very urgently on that. Thank you.
Councillor Hollis, the 15 minutes have been used, so we move on to item 6A, presentation of petitions. I was notified of 6 petitions by the...
Sorry, can I just have a point of order, Chairman? Okay. I'd like to move a motion for the variation to the order of business under section 4.87E of Council's Constitution. Motions not requiring prior written notice. And under 87, I quote, motions can be moved and seconded orally at meetings, including a reason for proposing the motion to ensure meetings run smoothly and are conducted properly. The following are examples of such motion, and this is E, variation of the order of business. I requested that the Labour Group motion be moved up the order of business following the submission of petitions. The reason being that as the motion relates directly to the autumn statement, is clearly timely, and as such, the motion must be heard at this meeting.
I'll second that.
Members, by way of clarification, we've had a motion moved and seconded that changes the order of business to bring the Labour motion to the next item on the agenda. It's been moved and seconded. I'm going to hand to the chairman to take the vote on that motion.
Has everybody got that? Right, we'll repeat it. The motion is that item 13, notice of motions, motion 2, response to autumn statement, is moved up the order for hearing in advance of other business. So we're going to have a vote on that, and in the first case, it will be all those in favour. So all those in favour of that motion, please.
Just 1 second. Just 1 second. Right. Let's try and explain what's happening here. Through you, Mr. Chairman. When motions are printed in the budget book, they're done in the order that they're submitted. So we can't change the order of 1 and 2. So motions A and B or 1 and 2 are in the order they're in. But you can move a motion to move item 13 of the agenda, which is, I think, what you're asking. So item 13 would become the next item of business instead of item 6. Okay? It doesn't need a debate.
Yeah, no, I think you should have to be.
If you
Yeah, you
want.
can't change the order.
No. So I don't want to speak.
So I was wrong. Okay. I'm wrong. So. We need to show hands as to whether item 13 is preferential over all other business today. So it'll be all those in favour of that motion. All those in favour of that, please show by hands.
It's too late. No. It's item 13. Can't change it.
I think that's 24.
Okay, you need all those against.
Right, down. All those people against the motion.
No. No, you can't.
It goes through, doesn't it?
Yes, 34 face 24.
Let's see.
4 against.
So the motion.
Chairman, I want to ask the chairman something.
He's got to announce the outcome of the vote first.
Calm down, Councillor.
So those in favour of the motion, 24 votes. Those against the motion, 34 votes. So the motion falls.
I think Councillor Girling.
Chairman.
Councillor Girling, what do you want to indicate?
Thank you.
Can you be quiet, please, while Councillor Girling speaks?
Thank you, Chairman. There's a lot of people starting to cover their noses up. I think the smell is starting to get a bit strong in here. Can we either open the windows again, or can we, move whatever we have to move? Yeah, but the smell is becoming unbearable. I mean, I'm a squatty, I don't care, but there's some people. Yeah, I think we need to consider other people.
So, in response to Councillor Girling's request, we're opening the windows this side. Okay, who was it?
No, I can smell it.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. It's either the sewerage problem or the levels of hypocrisy we're experiencing in this chamber.
Oh, Christmas turkey.
Item 6A, and then we'll review the situation.
The chairman says, listen up, we're going to do item 6A and then we'll review the situation as regards foul odours. And hopefully, item 6A, presentation of petitions. I was notified of 6 petitions by the deadline. May I remind members there is a 1 minute time limit for the presentation of each petition and there is a maximum time limit of 15 minutes for this item. Councillor Boyd Elliott, the Chairman calls on Councillor Boyd Elliott, regarding resurfacing of Grange Crescent, Gadling.
Thank you, Chairman. Just want to reassure my group that it is out there. I did have Brussels sprouts, but I'm being accused of all sorts of things. So I have a petition here signed by all the residents of Grange Crescent in Gedling to ask the County Council to review the surface of the road and hopefully get a total resurfacing. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd Elliott. The Chairman now calls upon Councillor Francis Purdue-Horan, a petition regarding White Line Crossroads, Bingham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 petitions. The first. Excuse me.
You've got 2. Yeah, it's okay. You've got to. Go ahead and do both together.
Great time. The first petition I'm pleased to present on behalf of Austin Parish Council and residents of Austin. A petition signed by over 180 people supporting recommendations for urgent action to be taken to significantly improve road safety in and on the approaches to Austin Village after a number of serious accidents over the last couple of years and near misses. It is suggested and supported by residents that site meetings take place with the petitioners along with relevant agencies to consider and agree signage, road markings, reductions in speed, limits at key junctions and approaches to Austin as set out in the accompanying report, which I'll also submit. It is requested that the County Council commits to working with petitioners and relevant agencies to prevent any further serious accidents. My second petition, Mr. Chairman, involves the main thoroughfare through Bingham. Over the years, residents have been very concerned about the condition of Nottingham Road and Longacre, and in the centre in particular, the worst part of it, what we call the White Lion Crossroads, which is, and over nearly 600 people have signed a petition, 2 petitions. I have one of them, and the petition is calling for the White Line Crossroads to be completely resurfaced properly, rather than what is perceived to be endless patching every now and then. Thank you.
The next petition is from Councillor Carr regarding the state of pavements on River Green Crescent and Deanwood Avenue.
This is a petition of 64 residents of River Dean Crescent and Deanwood Avenue, in my division, concerning the poor state and general repair and maintenance of their roads. Although some areas have been reported through the council website, the general state of the pavement means that it is not possible to report every potential hazard individually. They point out to me, which is rather topical, that the demographics of the local population are that of mature and ageing population, and this includes wheelchair users and individuals who use walking aid. Thank you, Chair.
The next petition is from Councillor Darby requesting a residence parking scheme for Post Office Road, Coddington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a small petition from the residents of Post Office Road in Coddington in my Nottingham division. It is for the residents only parking scheme due to the significant number of problems they have parking outside their homes. This is a small petition, but due to the small size of the roads, but nonetheless, it is very important. Thank you.
The next petition is from Councillor Fold regarding the tram concession consultation.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This petition reads: Nottinghamshire County Council plan to scrap free tram travel. Oh, it's doing now. Anyway, it's plan to scrap free tram travel for the 154,000 residents in Nottinghamshire, including senior citizens, people with disabilities, and their carers or companions. We, the undersigned, say Nottinghamshire people deserve better, and we call upon Nottinghamshire County Council to withdraw this heartless plan and ensure that free concessionary tram travel is retained for county residents. Now, 73 people signed this in the freezing cold on Saturday morning at Beeston Interchange. I was there, they were kind of queuing to sign this, so I confidently predict there'll be hundreds, if not thousands, more of these petitions if it doesn't kind of get reversed. And also what they wanted me to ask for too is, if the consultation could be extended, and Councillor Garland's already suggested this, to enable more people to respond, especially those without access to the internet, and especially because the consultation period includes Christmas and the New Year.
Yeah. To resolve that the petition has been referred to the appropriate Cabinet members for consideration. A report will be brought back to the Council in due course in accordance with standing orders. So that leads. We'll just finish 6B, responses to petitions presented to the Chairman of the County Council. I move that the contents of the report and the actions approved be noted. This to note report has now been received by the Chamber. Thank you. Do you want to? How are people feeling? Is the air fresher than it was? Right, well, that's useful information. Anybody else want to comment? Or are you all happy to continue? So that's what we'll do then. We'll bang on. Move to item 8 because we've already done item 7. And that's Nottingham and Nottinghamshire Waste Local Plan submission to the Secretary of State. The Chairman calls upon Councillor Neil Clark, MBE, who will move the recommendations in the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and our pleasure in
moving this item relating to the waste local plan to be submitted to the Secretary of State. It's ironic, I suppose. I actually apologise for the fact that more than half the agenda is taken up with paper when we're discussing waste, paper, and the environment. But unfortunately, that's the cost of democracy, and we need to be following processes. So this report and its appendices asks Council to endorse the submission of a new Nottinghamshire and Nottingham waste local plan to the Secretary of State for examination. In accordance with the budget and policy framework procedure rules set out in the Constitution, full Council must approve the submission of a local plan for examination. Following examination, Council will then be invited to adopt the plan. The waste local plan is a statutory document that all waste planning authorities must prepare and keep up to date. It sets out policies against which all development proposals involving recycling and waste processing are assessed and determined. Both the County Council and the City Council are planning authorities for waste development, and for many years have prepared a single joint local plan covering both areas. The new plan aims to ensure that a sufficient range of sites are provided to meet expected future demand for recycling and waste management in the most sustainable way, and that includes greater levels of reuse and recycling of materials, seeking to minimise landfill, and safeguarding existing waste management sites from being unnecessarily lost or impacted by the development. The new plan provides an up-to-date policy basis for determining future applications for waste development in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. And some of the aims are to help achieve the recycling targets for household waste of 65%, which needs to be ambitious, and that's over the planned period to 2038, to support higher recycling rates of commercial and industrial waste, reduce the amount of waste that have to be disposed of to landfill, and ensure that future applications for waste processing and recycling are considered against strong criteria. The plan is not allocating specific sites for waste management. It instead has policies on broad locations for new development and sets out criteria-based policies under which applications will be considered by officers and Planning and Rights of Way Committee. The plan has been subject to extensive consultation during its development, whilst members have been kept informed of the plan's progress at meetings of the Joint Committee on Strategic Planning and Transport, which I currently chair, and there was also a special session of the Place Select Committee held in January to consider the plan. A revised pre-submission version of the plan was published for a period of 6 weeks between 30th of August and 11th of October. As this is a joint plan, the City Council will also be considering submission of the plan with a similar report made. As the joint local plan is a statutory planning document, it is considered that the progress of the plan is unlikely to be affected by the recent decision of the City Council to issue a Section 114 notice. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, I formally move recommendations 1, 2 and 3, which are on pages 97 and 98 of the agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. The Chairman now calls on Councillor Cotty, who will second the motion.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to support the the motion from Councillor Clark, and would like to reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cotty. We now call members who have indicated, and Councillor Creamer has indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll keep it short because we want to try and get to the motions later on. First and foremost, thank all the staff and all the officers and the members that's actually been involved in actually putting this plan together, both here and at the City. It is a lot of work. We think you've probably missed that, but we will be voting for it. and we think you've missed out just a couple of things, and if I could just mention them very quickly. The impact of climate change, which I asked a question on earlier. 7.48, this key impacts of climate change, waste across Nottinghamshire and Nottingham are likely to be increased risk of flooding and storm damage. And as we're discussing a motion on Storm Babel later on, it seems appropriate to mention that the Labour Group did propose to include the acknowledgement of climate change in that motion, but have been advised that this goes beyond scope of the motion, which gives the Council has declared climate emergency. And we consider that shameful. And as I said in an earlier debate as well on climate change, there really should be a named officer for it. As I said earlier on as well, I'm not too bothered who that cabinet member is, but it seemed to logically fall in Councillor Clark's actually purview. But I think it's important that we actually do need somebody, and those considerations, particularly with climate change and environment and waste, actually is taken into consideration. In terms of waste, water, again an important one, page 29 of the plan, point 5.2. 520. The Council will work with the water utility companies to assess the need for additional wastewater treatment capacity within the plan area. This could be expanded upon more, as it's very vague, and we know there is quite copious amounts of sewage being poured into our open waters at the moment. So with those two small critiques, we will be supporting it. But as has actually been said by the mover, this plan needs to be done. It needs to be updated on a fairly regular basis. It's taken 2 or 3 years to do this plan. We only get about 6 months to 2 years rest, and we'll start the next one. So those considerations can be taken into consideration now and continue to be taken into consideration on the next plan. So yes, we're supporting it. And again, thanks to all the officers and the work that's gone into it. It is a difficult document to put together.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. The Chairman calls Councillor Garland.
Thank you. I'd also like to reiterate everything that Councillor Creamer's just said, and particularly the issue about the amendment to the motion being rejected on the basis that it mentioned climate change in the context of flooding. But further to that, on page 112 of the plan, under SP...
Point of order, Mr Chairman. I haven't amended anything.
No, we weren't allowed to amend the motion.
That's what he said. Well, I'm talking about the waste local plan submission, Mr Chairman.
We're just adding information for you.
We're quoting the waste local plan, which actually says the key impacts of climate change on waste across Nottinghamshire are likely to be increased by the risk of flooding and storm damage. We think that climate change links to storm damage. Anyhow, on page 112 of the plan regarding SP1 waste prevention and reuse, it's disappointing to see there's no target linked directly to the amount of waste produced. It seems that, just good words are not enough, really. And then again, there's no targets as to risk for SP5 regarding climate change. It's just, again, rather a waffly target. But apart from that, thank you very much. We support this.
Thank you, Councillor Garland. I have no more speakers on this item. So, Councillor Cotty, you have reserved your right to speak. Do you wish to speak now?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just a piece of background information is that I would like to put forward is the local plan is a statutory planning document and is not a local authority waste strategy. Decisions on the strategy concerning the County Council's role as a waste management authority and its approach to the future waste targets, etc., are taken separately and led by the waste management team. Preparation on the pre-submission local plan has been informed by a body of evidence, including a waste needs assessment prepared by technical experts with the relevant documents listed as background papers, and which are all available on the waste local plan pages of the County Council's website. That's all I wish to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cotty. The Chairman now calls upon Councillor Neil Clark, who moved the motion, for his right to reply.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I just say this. I note the comments made by Councillors Creamer and Gowland, and in hoping that everybody supports this, I also want to thank all the officer team for preparing such a comprehensive document, which will hopefully continue to serve our residents to reduce waste. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Clark, we are now moving to the vote. So, all those in favour? Thank Thank you. Yeah, appears to be unanimous. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Thank you, it's unanimous. Nine, Treasury Management Mid-Year Report 2023 and 24. The Chairman calls Councillor Richard Jackson, who will move the recommendations in the report.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This report is to provide Council with a mid-year review of the Council's Treasury Management activities in 2023-24 for the 6 months to the 30th of September. It's in accordance with the budget report requirements approved last February. In the first half of this financial year, borrowing and investments have been in accordance with the approved limits as set out in the Council's Treasury Management Policy and Strategy. Appendix A of the report provides a detailed report on the Treasury Management activity, but the main points to note, Chairman, are that all Treasury Management activities were undertaken by authorised officers within the limits agreed by Council. All investments were made to counterparties on the Council's approved lending list. In this period, the Council earned 5.74 million on its short-term lending, which equates to a return of 4.63%, which is above the benchmark of 4.61%. And although that's a small percentage, Chairman, it's a small percentage of an average of £274 million, so it is a large figure. In May 2023, £5.2 million of existing long-term debt matured, and a further 5.6 matured in November. Based on current forecasts, no further long-term borrowing will be required before 2027-28 financial year. The Council's in-year budget forecast is showing the financial benefits of the additional interest earned from Treasury Management activities and is reducing the Council's debt. So, Chairman, I move the recommendations on page 236. Happy to answer any questions members might have either now or in writing later.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. The Chairman calls Councillor Camilleri, who will second the motion.
Yeah, I second that motion. I second that motion and reserve the right. Thank you. Second that motion.
That's a song about it. There is no members who have indicated to speak. Is there any members who wish to speak? Councillor Camilleri, do you wish to exercise your right to speak?
Yes, I reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Well, there's no speakers.
Sorry, no speakers.
No speakers. No. So if you wish to speak, you need to speak now.
I've got nothing to say. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Councillor Jackson, do you wish to
respond to? I'll sum up, Jim. No, just to thank really the officers who are involved in Treasury Management. Unlike a lot of authorities, we run Treasury Management in-house, and we're above the kind of national benchmark for what we achieve through Treasury Management, which is making a positive impact on the finances of the Council. So it's a well run and well managed team.
Councillor Jackson, we will now. This is a note report, so it's been received by the Chamber and noted. Thank you very much. So we've already had item 10. We'll move to item 11, the Executive Report, Key Issues and Activities. As set out in the Constitution, the Leader has provided an executive report. The Leader will move the receipt of the report for noting and may make a short statement introducing it. In the absence of the Deputy Leader, so we now call upon Councillor Bradley, who will move the report to be noted.
Thank you, Chairman. It's been busy. That's why I look so tired, Mike. We've been doing loads in the last few months, and most of it listed in the executive report there in writing, so I don't intend to go through all of it. The few things just to flag, I think, I know Councillor Clark, Pringle and Councillor Helen Ann Smith very much enjoyed the CCN conference just a few weeks ago. We always have a lovely time with colleagues from around the country. And is pertinent to some of the other items on the agenda today. There was much discussion there about some of the services we've discussed today, and in particular around pressures on local government funding and finance, which you will have seen in recent days has led to leaders writing to government about those pressures. There was a lot of media coverage of that yesterday. So we continue to make that case. I appeared in front of the Business Trade Select Committee to discuss free ports and investment zones and their impact and implications for the region, whether they're working or not working, the complexities that we have in our area, and also some of the opportunities that we hope that they will deliver, being alongside the Mayor of, I want to say, South Yorkshire. They've all got mayors in Yorkshire, and the Chief Executive of the Freeport in the East Midlands to discuss some of those opportunities. We've had the Prime Minister come and visit us 3 times in Nottinghamshire in recent months, which is a positive indication, I hope, of his commitment to this part of the world and to listening to Nottinghamshire residents, first in Gedling in the summer, in terms of visiting our holiday activity fund provision. More recently in Newark, to come and visit staff at the Curry's Repair Centre, and most recently, as detailed in the report, meeting residents in Worksop, which many members of the group attended, which I think went down really well. I'd like to thank all members of all sides of the House for their attendance and engagement in remembrance events that have happened since our last meeting. Nottinghamshire and many of our communities that we represent always turn out in force and always do an amazing job of respecting those days and events in our calendar. I want to particularly highlight the work of the Warsop Poppy Gang in my parliamentary constituency, who are incredible, I have to say, and add every year to the displays that they put on this year, including the faces and history of a number of fallen soldiers from the village, which always is an incredible effort and a great team of people that I just want to recognise in this conversation today. I attended the ceremony in Warsop. I always get a lot of stick for not being able to go to all 5 places in one day, but I try my best to get around, and this time it was Warsop. A number of other relevant, it's been a long day, visits that I've been along that I don't intend to go into any great detail on. The one I do want to highlight in particular is the visit of the Energy Minister to Retford a few weeks ago, where we discussed the next steps and the progress of step fusion investment in our region, something we've discussed in this chamber a lot, which is a really exciting opportunity for us in clean energy and continues to grow the work that we do there. We're working to both deliver the UK AEA concept there, but also to attract private sector investment. And I know that subsequent to his visit to Retford, the Minister has been in the USA talking to fusion industries out there about West Burton. So the more that we continue to engage government ministers in that project, I think the better. I don't intend to dwell too much on any of the rest of it. There's obviously details of progress on decisions that have been made since then, other than to highlight the Ravensdale SEND school, which will now proceed into next year, which is really, really positive step, an exciting step for us as a council as we continue to tackle and focus on that SEN need around our county. I think that's it from me, Chair. I know there are a number of questions on the report, and I'll cover, no doubt, some more detail there.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. The Chairman calls upon Councillor Bruce Lawton, who will second the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lawton. This to note report has been received by the Chairman. Thank you. Item 12A, questions to the Leader of the Council on the Executive Report. As set out in the Constitution, a maximum of 15 minutes is allowed for questions to the Leader of the Council on the Executive Report, after which any remaining questions will receive a written response. There will be a maximum of 1 supplementary question, which must be from the member who asked the original question. The supplementary question should be on the same matter and should be in the form of a question and not a statement. There are 7 questions as follows. And from Councillor Kate Fowle concerning the Midlands Connect event. Councillor Fowle.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So the question is, at the Midlands Connect event that you referenced in your report, discussions on the changes in rail investment following recent government's announcements. Did these discussions include the impact of abandoning the East Midlands HS2 growth strategy? Well, the impact that abandoning the East Midlands HS2 strategy will have on Nottinghamshire?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Fowle. The changes to the HS2 strategy were on the agenda at the meeting. No surprise, it was attended by the Chair of HS2 Limited as a contributor, and we had a lengthy discussion about that, the implications discussed at great length with a number of leaders, not just myself, from around the East Midlands. as the chair of the region's HS2 strategy board, I've been involved in numerous discussions about those next steps and implications too. Whilst there's obviously a significant impact in terms of particularly the journey times between Nottingham and Birmingham, in terms of these changes, I don't recognise what you've said about the growth strategy being scrapped. I'm the chair of that particular board, and in truth, whilst the model that we had devised and worked up over the previous 12 months through government funding incorporated HS2 in the thinking, it remains a positive and viable growth strategy even without new HS2 lines. We just need to go away and rethink how we get people in and out in a transport sense. But the work will be adapted to these new circumstances. It will become the East Midlands Stations growth strategy and continues to focus on key hub rail stations at Parkway, Nottingham, Derby and Chesterfield, and to further develop plans for major investment and growth around those sites. I've always maintained in conversations I've had with government about the HS2 announcements that the key priority for us as a region was not journey times between here and there. It was the hubs and the growth around places where stations were due and where trains would have arrived, Toten being one example, Parkway, Chesterfield, Derby, Nottingham, as I've raised. We can continue to build around those stations and access. We just need to use the funding that has been shifted away from HS2 and into our regional transport package, whether that is the bus funding we've recently received, the £1.5 billion Devolved Transport Fund, to devise the right ways to help people to access those sites. And that includes, as I say, the new Toten development, which presents a major opportunity for us in terms of growth. So not gone, it will have to change. There are obviously some impacts, and it's incumbent on us now as members, and it will be incumbent on the new combined authority in particular to take that plan forward. The decision by the board yesterday was to make those amendments to the plan, to continue with the ongoing government funding that we've got to redevise those strategies, and hopefully in May, when the combined authority comes into being, to put those plans on the desk of the mayor to have them delivered.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Powell, have you a supplementary question?
I do understand that there'll need to be some changes now, but as leader of the Council on Mansfield MP, you promised the people of Nottinghamshire that your Conservative Party will both level up our county and deliver HS2, and neither of those things have happened. And certainly, I mean, you haven't got anywhere close to levelling up in Nottinghamshire. And some of our areas, like Gedling, have had no levelling up money.
You're asking a question.
I am I am coming with that.
Enjoy it, Councillor Powell, please.
Okay. So HS2 is gone with 84,000 good jobs potentially, and the broken promise of £4 billion. So what I want to, in concrete detail from you, is how much genuinely new money can we confidently expect to arrive in our council budgets following the scrapping of HS2, and when will that happen?
I don't recognise the £4 billion figure that she's raised there at all. We've already seen some of the announcements that have come from central government. In fact, at the time when the Prime Minister announced the changes to the HS2 strategy, he also announced what he was going to do with the money, and the equivalent funding is still to come to our area. We've seen some of that already in the form of additional bus BSIP funding that we've had announced and allocated to Nottinghamshire County Council in recent weeks. We've seen it already in the form of 10 years of additional highways funding, which is most welcome, I have to say, that we've seen allocated in the next few, for the next 10 years. So I think from memory, look at Councillor Clark, comes to some 180 million quid over the next decade of additional highways funding for our county. Bear in mind that 8 billion figure is regional, so 180 million quid for our county. And of course the £1.5 billion Devolved Transport Fund, which is a huge increase on that local public transport funding that we currently have. I think we totted up our county's transport budget, in effect, when you look at subsidies and things, as we were trying to figure out what we shift to the combined authority. It comes to some 15 million or so pounds, 17 million pounds, something like that, in the mid-teens. So £1.5 billion for our two counties is quite some increase in terms of investment into the region's public transport. Now, I recognise what you said about HS2. Obviously, decisions to implement it in the first place were taken long ago. It has dragged on for a very long time. It clearly has major implications for all sorts of reasons around the country, not just here. But I think many residents that I've spoken to do recognise the benefit of that public transport investment, do recognise the benefit of us having local control of what we deliver with that money, which is what is set to happen, rather than having a plan created in Westminster that perhaps in many ways speaks to Westminster's priorities as opposed to ours. And equally, I think when you look at the levelling up funding that we've received as a county, although clearly the demographics and the need, in inverted commas, around different parts of the county varies a great deal, I think we have had probably one of the highest figures in terms of levelling up funds come to our county, some 250 odd million quid that I can think of in terms of all sorts of projects across particularly the Coalfield North of the county. So I don't recognise what you said about us somehow missing out on funding. Funding will be reallocated. The same figure in terms of funding will come to our local devolved budgets. I recognise it's a big change. I recognise that there are impacts of that. But it's incumbent on us then to take that new and now locally delivered and flexible funding and make sure we do something positive with it.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. The second question from Councillor Jason Z. Rosner regarding visit by the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Councillor Z. Rosner.
Thank you, Chairman. In the report, you welcomed the visit of the current Prime Minister to Nottinghamshire. Did you discuss inflation and its impact on the County Council?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Jason. Really pleased that the Prime Minister chose to visit Nottinghamshire several times, as I said in my speech about the report itself, both in Gedling, at Currys in Newark, and more recently in workshops, to speak to local businesses and speak to local residents. Of course, in that conversation with residents, the cost of living and the impact of inflation absolutely did come up, and along with a number of other issues as well. I think it shows a commitment to our county that he's spending time here and listening to local residents. I should add that he was also meant to visit Mansfield Woodhouse Library. Unfortunately, storms and train disruption impacted on that one, but I hope to have him back. So as I say, that did come up in conversation, not specifically around the council. He was there to speak to residents rather than to me, but I can assure you that I do speak with Prime Minister, Chancellor, Local Government Secretary on these matters on a regular basis. You'll have seen possibly media coverage yesterday of our latest correspondence with the Prime Minister on these matters, and the Chief Executive and I recently met with the then Local Government Minister Lee Rowley to take him through the pressures on our budget and the impact of inflation in great detail, so we continue to make that case to government wherever we can.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Zadrozny, have you a supplementary question?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Ben. You recall on the subject of inflation that Councillor Purdue, Haran and I had meetings with some of your councillors and officers to discuss our opposition to the rise in school meals, with that being 15%. And it was at that meeting we were using 18-month-year-old inflation figures. Now, in your report, it says that they're now at 4.6%. According to the Daily Telegraph, Britain's the only rich economy where food prices are rising by more than 10%. But actually, this leaves a gap of 5% in Nottingshire's school rise and food inflation. So can I ask, in the light of slowing down inflation, will you consider reducing the 15% rise in meal prices? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zadrozny. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you for the question. As I think has been discussed in great detail, the rise in price of school meals is indicative of the rise that has already happened, rather than a predicted rise in the future. Although prices inevitably, as they are rising across the shops, and also in terms of the wages and other things that impact on the delivery of that particular service, have had to rise. We've done everything that we can do to keep that rise below what many other councils have done. We are still well below actually recovering our costs, and the amount that we taxpayers subsidise in effect those meals by each year has grown as we continue to put more support in to trying to keep those prices low. So I would just ask Councillor Drozzy to recognise that we're not trying to guess here at what future inflation will be. I think the Prime Minister himself would recognise that there's more work to do to bring it down to the average kind of 2% target that normally is where we prefer to be nationally, the Bank of England target, but that we aren't making those decisions about free school meals based on future predictions. We're making them based on the current cost of delivering those services, and we've done everything that we can to try and mitigate that for schools as much as we possibly can.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. The third question from Councillor Welsh, concerning the Business and Trade Select Committee. Councillor Welsh.
Thank you. At the Business Trade Select Committee, what areas of devolved funding did you advocate for as council leader?
Thank you, Chair. The Business Trade Select Committee was particularly focused on the investment zone and Freeport propositions within the region, as that's the specific focus of their inquiry. So I attended the committee alongside South Yorkshire, I was right, Mayor Oliver Coppard to speak about these projects and about the management of them in our various local contexts. In a separate session, as I said, the Chief Executive of the Freeport also attended and gave evidence. It's brilliant news that the East Midlands in the autumn statement had an investment zone agreed and secured, and having called for it to be expanded during that select committee meeting, I'm really pleased that they've actually doubled the investment from 80 to 160 million pounds. That's a really significant investment in our region, one we're only able to access because of the emerging combined authority that we are part of. I also called for the extension of Freeport timeframes because, of course, the pandemic in the middle of the proposed period for tax incentives to be utilised delayed things in the delivery of the Freeport significantly. We're faced with potentially running out of time before we manage to use those incentives to their full potential. So again, really positive news that those timeframes have since been extended from 2026 to 2031. Whilst the discussion wasn't specifically about devolution or the combined authority, we did discuss some elements related to economic growth in particular, and I highlighted the opportunity to bring a clearer strategy together to make sure that all of these different vehicles that we have, as I mentioned in my speech earlier on, Freeport, DevCo, Fusion, Investment Zones, Gay Share Fund and others, are all working on a shared endeavour that complement each other, which is a piece of work that we're currently undertaking. I was asked specifically about fiscal devolution and confirmed that I'd like to see more opportunities for local flexibility on taxation, on business rates and the like, so that we can get more benefit locally from the growth that we create. I was also asked about areas where I might like to see further powers in relation specifically to delivering the economic goals of these projects, and I suggested that more freedom around planning decisions and rules based on our local strategy rather than on national frameworks would be beneficial. I've always said in those planning conversations that I don't think it's likely, to be honest, that we will ever find a national planning framework that works for the entire country, because our need and our local areas are so different and the need is so different in each place. So I would welcome and suggested in the meeting that I would welcome being able to have that local flexibility to support growth and accelerate progress on these various projects, but also in terms of trying to build better homes in the most appropriate places. I'd reiterate, just to add context to a question, that the Select Committee was discussing specifically Freeports and investment zones, so we didn't have a wider context discussion about the future of devolution in that space, but there's a number of examples there of things that I have called for or suggested in terms of further powers.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Welch, have you a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Just to remind you, Ben, because you've obviously been very busy, at the Business Select Committee, you also said, from my point of view as a council leader, youth work and prevention services in communities, I would love to get more into that space, particularly around devolved funding. According to Local Government Association, funding for council youth services nationally has been cut by 69% since 2010-11, gone from 1.4 billion down to 429 million pounds, and is still under half of the funding we had a decade ago. Do you accept that a decade of austerity, taking almost £1 billion out of youth services and cutting over 4,500 youth works jobs, was a short-sighted, damning decision by successive Conservative-led governments?
Thank you, Councillor Welch. Councillor Bradley, you've got just a minute and a half to...
No worries, I shall be very brief. Obviously, we can have a political argument about the need or lack of need for tightening the belts in the wake of 2008 financial crash. Probably not the most productive thing for us to do. I think, but in terms of response to your question, you've obviously remembered my responses better than I have, so thank you for highlighting it. I absolutely do think that the Combined Authority presents a really positive opportunity for us to seek more investment in youth services. I have always, in this position, and we as an administration have always prioritised prevention and community-based services to the extent that we've just created a new cabinet position specifically for prevention and community-based services, and we continue to work as best we can within the budget pressures that we have to protect and enhance youth services. I'm very proud that despite the financial challenges and budget reductions, particularly between 2010 and 15, we are one of very few councils that maintains a proactive and often open access youth service in many of our communities. That hasn't happened in many places, and I am the first to make the point when we have these meetings about why Nottinghamshire County Council is relatively better off in terms of its financial position to many other councils. It is because of the work that's been done by previous administrations as well as our own to continue to protect those services as much as we possibly can within those constraints, to do that prevention work, to keep people out of the most acute care, and given the budget pressures that we have, there are challenges in managing all of that, but we intend absolutely to continue to do the best we can. I do think that the Youth Investment Fund in particular is a very straightforward opportunity for us to get national funding passed to us on a local level so that we can use it better in the context of a combined authority.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Questions have been asked and answered, and we move on to item 12B, questions to the Leader, Cabinet members and Committee Chairman. As set out in the Constitution, we have 45 minutes remaining for questions to the Leader, Cabinet members and Committee Chairman, after which any remaining questions will receive a written response. There will be a maximum of one supplementary question, which must be from the member who asked the original question. The supplementary question should be on the same matter and should be in the form of a question, not a statement. There are 10 questions as follows. From Councillor Lee, number 1, concerning additional funding for highways resurfacing. Councillor Lee.
Chairman, thank you very much. Would the Cabinet member join me in welcoming the additional funding announced by government last month for highway resurfacing across this county and country? And could he briefly explain how our share of this investment will be deployed in Nottinghamshire?
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Neil Clark, MB, to reply.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Lee. Yes, indeed, I'll join you in welcoming the additional funding announced last month by the Transport Secretary, Mark Harper. Across England, local highway authorities will receive £150 million this financial year, followed by a further £150 million for the following 2024-25 year, with the rest of a total £8.3 billion funding being allocated through to 2034. For Nottinghamshire in the short term, this means an extra £4.7 million spread over this year and next year, which we will use to resurface more roads across the county than previously planned. Thanks to our Highways Review and Highways Improvement Plan, we are already making more efficient use of resources to complete larger, first time patch repairs, and it's fair to say these are receiving a broadly positive response from the public. For example, an Arundel resident was impressed with the speed, efficiency and professionalism with which the VIA team completed road surfacing works in his area. And I quote his comment, "I just want to compliment your team that has just finished the job in Arundel. What a marvellous job they've done. Come 3 o'clock on the second day, they were done and dusted. There was neither a machine, lorry or a man in sight. They have made a really good job and they really got stuck in. I was very impressed with the way they worked. They were a very good team who were swift and on schedule." Chairman, the County Council and its partner VIA has already delivered over 128 square metres of large-scale highway patching this year, and residents can make use of the notshighways.co.uk website or the My Nots app to see over 300 locations where we've made these repairs since April. We recognise that winter is always a particularly challenging time, and snow and ice can cause significant damage to the surfaces of our roads and footways. This additional funding will allow us to plan and have resources in place to respond more quickly to this damage and keep our highway networks safe. In addition to our large-scale patching repairs, we also intend to accelerate the delivery of highway resurfacing schemes that have already been identified but which have been programmed for future years. The knowledge that central government has made this money available will allow us to collaborate with our contractors and their suppliers to ensure we are able to deliver the best possible value for our works. So, yes, Councillor Lee, of course we should welcome this funding, but let's describe it as a qualified welcome, because we could always do with more. It's important to view the extra £4.7 million we're receiving in the context of the £150 million road repair backlog we inherited, and we need to be clear with the public that this money will not mean we can immediately repair all the roads in Nottinghamshire that need attention. It's also important to view this extra £4.7 million in the context of other announcements in the recent autumn statement that bring unfunded costs on this council in other ways. So while we will spend this money on highways, as intended, it doesn't resolve other budget pressures we face. Without wishing to preempt motion 2 in the next item on today's agenda, I can confirm we will continue to lobby various government departments to provide greater amounts of funding, and highways continues to be one of our big priorities in that regard. The response to such lobbying from government tends to come in phases or tranches of money like this, rather than all at once. So I think it's perfectly fair to acknowledge this funding as a step in the right direction, which without relinquishing our entitlement to lobby for more such funding in the future. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Lee, have you a supplementary question?
I do. I thank you very much for that answer. It's really interesting that we seem to get lots of criticisms about highways, but we have inherited a lot of the issues. The question to yourself is as you'll be aware, I've, for many years, since I've been elected councillor, I've been shouting about a road in particular called Wilfred Avenue and Lansbury Road. Would you be willing to come out and take a look at the road before you look at any future allocations of resources?
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Clark to reply.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure that the first port of call is to speak to your district manager, and obviously I'm sure that they will report back as necessary, and all these will be considered in the fullness of time. I do want to just clarify one thing, Chairman. I think my original response, I've just been tipped off that apparently I said 128 square metres. Of course, I meant over 128,000 square metres, which does put a slightly different light on the situation. But just to clarify, it's definitely over 128,000 square metres of repair. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. The second question is from Councillor Welsh concerning workforce absences. Councillor Welsh.
The council recently reported that as many as 25% of NCC Nottingham County Council workforce are off work with mental health issues. What is the council doing to support these staff?
Councillor Jackson, Richard Jackson, to reply.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and can I thank Councillor Welsh for your question. The council has been supporting employees with a wide range of measures that have seen sickness absence levels reduced consistently over the past 15 months from 12.1 to 9.97 days. And particularly like to just put on record my thanks to Councillor Gordon Wheeler and Councillor Jonathan Wheeler as the former portfolio holder and deputy for personnel, because it's one of their priorities and something that they've particularly driven. The most common reason for sickness absence, as Councillor Welsh points out, is mental health, and that accounts for 25% of absences. It's part of an increasing national picture, as many organisations have seen a rise in mental health being a main or a major cause to sickness absence. But we should note, Mr. Chairman, that 45% of our employees have no sickness absence at all. We have a wide range of measures in place to support our employees directly and to enable our managers to support their teams. These are some things such as free 24-hour access to our counselling services provided by Health Assured, mental health first aiders across the organisation. Several employees are trained to support colleagues and to signpost them to support services across the county, and we're currently increasing that provision. Access to the occupational health, including a nurse with specialisms in mental health, information from managers on supporting staff with mental health issues, including guidance on managing stress in the workplace. There's access to Business Disability Forum to offer support and advice around long-term sickness cases. We have grief cafes, a council wellbeing newsletter with tips, support and advice, and wellbeing time to talk events. Coming in the next year or so, we also have a stress risk assessment tool for schools and for managers, wellbeing webinars and books, and mental health training for managers. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Welsh, have you a supplementary question?
Thank you. What does the Cabinet member believe is a healthy level of workforce absence, and how does he plan to deliver that target by 2025, especially in the face of further proposed Conservative government damaging cuts to frontline services, as outlined in the leader's recent letter to government?
Councillor Jackson to reply.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, it would be sound flippant to say that, you know, we don't want any sickness absence. Recognise that's not achievable. We want to keep it down as low as possible. I think the reduction that we've seen in the last 15 months is significant. It's reduced by about a sixth, and that's a great trajectory, and it's something that we want to build on. There's a lot of work that's going on, and I think from the answer that I gave a few minutes ago, there's an awful lot going on, but there's always more that we can do, and we're always open to ideas and welcome suggestions from Councillor Welsh and from any members. We're putting together a strategy, so welcome members contributing to that.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. The third question is from Councillor Carr concerning land at Towton.
Thank you, Chairman. The final accounts report to the full council on the 23rd of July 2020 indicated the purchase of land at Towton for 22.143 million. This was for, and I quote, future development in conjunction with the proposed HS2 rail route. At the overview meeting on November the 23rd, you confirmed that the council still owned this land. Are there any plans to sell this, and do you believe that the price of this land has been impacted by the failure of the government to keep their promise over HS2?
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Richard Jackson to reply.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Although I did answer this at the overview committee last week, it really sits within the EDAM area, and I think Councillor Girling would be better placed to answer the question than I.
Councillor Girling, do you wish to answer this question?
Yes, please, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm happy to take this question as it falls within my remit. For clarity, Councillor Carr, it also falls within my remit to purchase land and property, although the land you are referring to was purchased before my appointment as Cabinet Member for Economic Development and Strategic Asset Management. I hope that helps if you have any further questions on this subject. Chairman, Councillor Carr is correct. Don't hear that very often. The council did buy this land and still owns it. The land was purchased with the benefit of planning consent for the residential use upon which the original purchase price was based. At the time of purchase, risk to the council was mitigated by the ability to sell on for residential use should proposals around HS2 falter. This remains the case. The value of the land, therefore, has never been directly linked to HS2 proposals, and based on this, in the current market, has higher value now than at the time of purchase. The council continues to consider its options for the site alongside wider opportunities at Towton, Chetwynd and Ratcliffe-on-Soar, working in conjunction with Broxtowe Borough Council. That's the council you are deputy leader of, I believe, which has a
I'm no longer deputy leader.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yes, I'm no longer deputy leader because the Labour Party now controls Broxtowe.
But you're still on the council.
If you accuse me of not getting my facts right, and you get yours right, mate.
And we continue with what we're doing, Councillor Girling.
Oh, but I was giving you credit for something you're not, so I apologise. Which has adopted a supplementary planning document relating to the area and the East Midlands Development Corporation. This work will continue with stakeholders into 2024 with the intention of agreeing a long-term usage of the site for the benefit of residents and businesses. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Girling. Councillor Carr, have you a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you. I've written down here that because it's 17 days to Christmas, I was going to be kind, but that was when I thought Richard was going to answer my question, and not Councillor Girling. Can I ask then, have Nottinghamshire County Council had a recent professional valuation of this site? And if there's not had a recent professional valuation of the site, if it is less than what we paid for it, will the balance sheet of this council be amended accordingly?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No. Why would we? Yeah, we haven't decided what we're going to do with it yet. We don't know if we're going to sell it. We don't know if we're going to build on it. We don't know what's going to happen to it. So it wouldn't be the right time to spend money getting it professionally valued. What I do have faith in, though, is my officers who do this day in, day out, knowing land values all around this county. And if they're telling me that the land value has gone up, I believe them, and I've got no reason not to believe them because they're very good at their job. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Girling. Question 4 from Councillor Carey concerning funding for concessionary tram travel. Councillor Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question to the Cabinet Member for Transport and Environment. Nottinghamshire County Council currently offers free travel on the tram network in Nottingham between 9:30am and 11pm on weekdays and all day at weekends and bank holidays to holders of a valid English National Concessionary Travel Pass for bus travel. Given that we're currently consulting residents on whether any changes should be made to this non-statutory concessionary tram provision, and given that today's agenda considered the potential for East Midlands Combined Authority with significant powers and funding for strategic transport, would the Cabinet Member explain what possibilities there may be for concessionary tram travel funding arising from the creation of this new regional authority, if agreed? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carey. Councillor Neil Clark to reply.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Carey. As a travel concession authority, Nottinghamshire County Council has a statutory duty to provide free travel on local bus services for holders of a valid travel pass, as you indicated. Holders of concessionary passes are split into two groups: those meeting the elderly age of entitlement and those with a disability. The pass allows free travel on buses between 9:30 and 11 on weekdays and all day on weekends and bank holidays. The County Council also offers free tram travel on the tram network during these times to these concessionary bus travel pass holders as part of our tram concession scheme. This, however, is a non-statutory requirement. The tram journeys made by concessionary bus pass holders and their companions cost the County Council taxpayer £900,000 per year. And it is no secret that we, like other councils, are facing significant financial pressures on our budget due to high levels of inflation and energy costs. In that context, where we need to ensure that we are targeting resources effectively and efficiently at those who need it most, we are seeking the views of concessionary tram travel passengers and taxpayers throughout the county on whether they think any changes should be made to the current tram concession scheme to reduce the costs to the taxpayer. 4 possible options, one of which, of course, Mr. Chairman, is no change. The consultation is ongoing until the 7th of January next year, so there is still a month left for residents to express their views. We will consider all responses, and I want to emphasise that no decisions have been made. Councillor Curry's question makes a valid point, especially in view of the decision taken earlier today, that there are new possibilities appearing on the horizon regarding the future funding of transport initiatives, including concessionary travel schemes such as this in the question. Given that the County Council, as an authority with extensive social care responsibilities, will need to spend increasing amounts of its resources on meeting child and adult social care demands, it's important to recognise that the emerging East Midlands Combined County Authority will have extensive responsibility for transport policy, with a £1.5 billion transport fund at its disposal. Neither this County Council nor the Combined Authority are required statutorily to provide free concessionary tram travel, but the Combined Authority will soon become the proper body to decide the long-term future of this provision and the organisation best equipped to fund it. From next year, it will be the Combined Authority, rather than us, that is the Transport Authority. The outcomes of our current consultation will therefore be as useful and informative to the deliberations of this new regional authority as they are to this council. And that's why we want as many people as possible to engage with the current ongoing consultation process. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Curry, have you a supplementary question?
No, I don't. I'd like to thank Councillor Clark for his answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Question 5 from Councillor Henshaw about closure of Ashdale Care Home. Councillor Henshaw.
Thanks, Chair, for bringing me in. Can the Cabinet member provide an update on the recent closure of the Ashdale Care Home in Mansfield, amid reports highlighting serious safeguarding issues? Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Councillor Henshaw. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just before I get into answering the question, just I'd like to acknowledge that obviously Scott and I have huge sensitivity for this, not least for the residents involved. Of course, any time we get ourselves into this situation, you can't underestimate the anguish that causes for those who are living in whatever home and their families, and of course our staff and the care home staff. So just with that in mind before I answer. So Ashdale Care Home in Mansfield was given an immediate closure notice on the 21st of September 2023 by the Care Quality Commission. They found the home to be inadequate, and on subsequent visits the care did not meet the requirements of their registration, so this was removed. Colleagues in our social care teams responded to support people to move that day under difficult circumstances given the distress this creates to people, their families and staff working at the home. Given the health needs of several of the residents, the work involved a range of health professionals. Indeed, the partnership work that took place around the time of this distressing event was significant and impressive. Where there were concerns about the well-being of individual people, the usual safeguarding work has taken place. I confirm that we have ensured that people who have moved are thriving in their new place of residence. And I have thanked our staff here and staff of the care home, and indeed the other agencies involved, right down from our chief executive to the frontline staff, and I take the opportunity to do so once again. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you to the staff. Thank you, Paul.
Please, Chair. Obviously, I mean, quite clearly, you might be passionate about bringing people together and being very sensitive about these issues, which we all are. But were you aware that there is another care home in Mansfield that's recently, Beach Teams recently said that they're going to have to close? So I think there's something wrong somewhere in relation to the situation. Do you think that the current monitoring and inspection regime is sufficiently robust, and are care providers sufficiently funded to ensure their businesses can continue? And do you see the connection, as I do, between people being locked into unattended rooms, not being given their medication? These are very often vulnerable and elderly people who are being treated appallingly. And I see this as a direct result and cause of social care underfunding. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Henshaw. Councillor Barney to reply.
Yeah, Paul, as ever, I think you and I feel in the same way on a human level about these issues, and I appreciate the fact that I do think there is that real serious strong connection between us in the way we approach these things. That said, in answering your question, this authority is involved with several hundred care homes and every day does amazing work in ensuring the safety of our residents in all of those homes right across Nottinghamshire. In a very small number of cases, issues arise, and I have to say it's been quite an enlightening part of this job and quite an unpleasant part of this job, and it shows the best and the worst of human nature in terms of what comes out in some of these residences. I can't go into specific details, it wouldn't be appropriate to for a number of different reasons about either of the care homes that you mentioned, but in both cases neither of them have anything to do with the funding levels. They are very specific issues, staff related issues, and I need to leave it there before I get myself into any difficulties. Regarding the way that our care homes on the wider portfolio operate, I'm delighted that we've been able to put in the measures that we have over the last 24 months. That, as I've said before, against a backdrop of great fears and challenges that might not be the case. As always, we'd like to do more, we'd like to fund more, but I'm content that actually in terms of safety and in terms of well-being, that the policies of this council are robust, that the responses of this council are tremendous when the difficulties do arise. And from my perspective, I think that residents across Nottinghamshire can know that their loved ones are cared for well, and that this organisation is there on hand, because I've seen the outworking when it does go wrong, and just actually what it takes to try and put that right. So again, just some of our staff are literally in these circumstances give up 48 hours of the time to respond and do what's needed. It's extraordinary what comes together, and I'm incredibly proud of that, to be honest with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnaby. Question 6 from Councillor Purdue-Horan about changes to the MTFP following the autumn statement. Councillor Purdue-Horan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the beginning of November, this council adjusted its medium-term financial strategy estimates, which showed that by 2026-27 financial year, it will need to spend 60.2 million more than its predicted income. Could Councillor Jackson update the council on whether this figure has changed following the government's autumn statement?
Thank you, Councillor Purdue-Horan. Councillor Richard Jackson to reply.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Purdue-Horan effectively posed the same question to me over the committee last Thursday, so you shouldn't be too surprised, and I'm going to reply today much the same as I did at that meeting. He's correct about our initial estimate that the proposed increase in the national living wage equates to an additional £5 million requirement for the next financial year. This is solely due to the likely impact upon the costs of home care and residential care services. However, the Chancellor's autumn statement represents only one part of the information and evidence that will contribute to our next MTFS projection when it's published. There are many other variables, as I said at that meeting last week, which need to be considered. For example, while the national living wage uplift represents an additional pressure, we can also factor into our calculations that inflation has fallen recently by more and faster than predicted, which will have a positive impact on our projections. Likewise, work is ongoing to mitigate the known pressures on our budget, and of course, we wait to discover the implications of a local government settlement later this month. What I will say at this stage, Chairman, is that I'm confident that the next MTFS is likely to show an overall reduction on the previously published £60.2 million budget gap rather than an increase. We'll publish an updated MTFS at the appropriate time when it's been worked through properly, rather than rushing out a simplistic calculation in the wake of the autumn statement alone. Although I know that the council leader, I'm sure, will be happy to speak about the broader implications of the autumn statement in response to the next question this afternoon.
Councillor Jackson. Councillor Purdue-Horan, have you a supplementary question? Go ahead.
Thank you. A Conservative councillor said to me only last week that the increased focus and scrutiny and criticism on Nottingham City Council over the last few years has helped to hide public and media scrutiny of the financial challenges facing Notts County Council. Just to remind members, our deficit predicted in the medium-term financial strategy over the next 3 years is currently double the deficit. Is currently double Nottingham City, and our deficit was doubled within 2 months. Would Councillor Jackson agree with me, and indeed the local government association, that many councillors similar to Nottinghamshire, including Conservative-controlled Derbyshire County Council, whose current year overspend is estimated to be around 46.4 million, and whose reserves have virtually been exhausted, face an existential crisis?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. In terms of a lack, I don't recognise that, and I'm not quite sure which Conservative councillor would have said anything like that to you, Francis, to be perfectly honest. But there we go. Look, in terms of media scrutiny, there was an awful lot of media scrutiny. I did something like 7 or 8 interviews 4 or 5 weeks ago when we published the MTFS, and I have to say that much to your displeasure, I'm sure, most, if not all, of the coverage that we got in the press locally and some of it nationally was actually positive about this council's finances. So I would just bear that in mind. You know, I think the fact that Francis referred to Derbyshire at 46. I think they've actually worked their figures down to something more like 33 now, but it's still enormous. The fact that we're not predicting any sort of an overspend in the current financial year should give some assurance to people, and I'm talking about people out there, that we can balance the budget without, we can manage budgets and keep them balanced without the need for massive service reductions, as I said at the overview committee, and that with that sort of pressure on council budgets everywhere, it was inevitable that the gap in the MTFS would increase, but it's now decreasing as we're working on it. And actually, this is the point in the cycle, November, December, every year, when we see that gap increase, and then as we come towards the February council meeting and setting final budget, we'll see it decreasing again. And we're confident that we will get to a balanced budget position by the end of February, and we look forward to your support on that.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. We now move on to question 7 from Councillor Camilleri regarding implications of the autumn statement for Nottinghamshire.
Thank you, Chair.
Camilleri.
Would the council leader provide a summary of the implications for Nottinghamshire of the Chancellor's autumn statement, please?
Thank you, Councillor Camilleri. Councillor Bradley to reply.
Could I thank Councillor Camilleri for the very polite way in which
I am polite on it, really.
Very polite indeed. Thank you for the question. There's a bit to go at here, some really positive aspects to discuss. There are also some challenges, so I'll start with the elephant in the room from that perspective. I'm aware that the autumn statement didn't address local government funding. Colleagues will know we've got very significant pressures on budgets and services. Councillor Jackson has just alluded to some of those challenges. That's why this is the right time to make that case ahead of the local government settlement that comes in December. We've talked about coverage of that in recent days and the work that we're doing to try and do that. This is the right time in the cycle to highlight these challenges. We've been in conversations with ministers across departments about that for several weeks. In response to Councillor Drosny, who's legged it earlier on, I met local government ministers, Chancellor Prime Minister and others. Councillor Clark has met transport ministers on several occasions. The CCN conference allowed us to lobby further on this. We are making that case loud and clear. And an important point, perhaps in the, I'm sure, inadvertent omission in the Labour Party's press release around their motion that went out last week. We know the final position on local government spending isn't finalised until the settlement, which we don't get a draft up till late December. So it's fair to say, though some have jumped to very negative conclusions, we don't know yet what the government intends to offer us. We'll find out in a few weeks' time. One significant challenge that does come from the autumn statement is the rise in living wage. And government, of course, wants to lift people very rightly and understandably out of low pay and tackle the cost of living, which is a laudable aim. But obviously that does add budget pressures to local councils as well. And we'll work through that as we make those plans in the coming year. But there are also some really positive factors for residents and for our economy across Nottinghamshire. As well as those things that we need to grapple with. As a Conservative with a small c, I've long called for government to address the issue of high taxes. I was pleased to hear the Chancellor say that he has the headroom to begin to cut taxes for our residents. The 2p cut in national insurance is a start. Alongside national insurance cuts for self-employed people, we'll keep more money in the pockets of local residents. I've been pleased to hear the Prime Minister also reiterate this point this week and trail the fact and the idea of further tax cuts to come in the new year, which would be most welcome. For both Nottinghamshire residents and businesses, that stands as a tax cut for 27 million people around the country, 2 million self-employed people, and an £11 billion cut in business taxes to help drive growth and investment. These are the biggest tax cuts we've had since the 1980s. We need to start to address the trend of rising taxes as the economy recovers and bring that burden down. I hope that this is just the start. Small businesses across the county will be relieved at the extension of the High Street 75% business rate relief. I've had representations from a range of pubs and shops about this issue in advance of the statement that would have caused real problems if it had gone up. So positive news for those businesses that it remains heavily discounted, as well as the freeze and alcohol duties that will help our local pubs. Increases in universal credit and local housing allowance will support some of our county's poorest families with up to £1,200 a year, whilst the second largest rise in state pension I think we've ever had will do similar for pensioners, an increase of £900. Additional support to help people who are economically inactive to get back into the workforce with tailored employment support and training are most welcome, and again will benefit some of our county's most vulnerable residents to get back into meaningful work with significant help. So there's lots of individual support out there for residents, for businesses, and as I've mentioned already, on an economic regeneration front, an investment front, East Midlands Investment Zone, Freeport Extension, and others that I won't go over again. But in short, Mr. Chairman, noting the absence of that particular local government announcement and the need to address that, as we are seeking to do between now and the settlement in a few weeks' time, there's an awful lot in here for our residents and businesses in supporting our county's economic potential and in their safeguarding people against those cost of living challenges as we seek to rebuild our local economy that is to be celebrated from the autumn statement. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Camilleri, have you a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, actually. Thank you, Leader. Over the next few months, you're going to be extremely busy with one thing or another. Could you assure the Council that, along with these measures that we have from the government, will you still be fighting for extra funding for Nottinghamshire? And of course, I wouldn't be a remiss, like Councillor, talking about Mansfield. Will you still carry on fighting, even though you're really busy? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Andre, you and I have this conversation on a regular basis, and I will reiterate my commitment to all of this. We know it's been much discussed in this chamber, the unique situation that I have in terms of various roles that I fulfil. It's all about trying to manage and work with people and move things in the right direction. We have a fabulous team here at the County Council, just as we do in my parliamentary office, just as we do in all settings, as we try and work towards delivering those outcomes. We've done a really good job, I think, of supporting Mansfield, of supporting investment in Mansfield and around our county in recent years. We'll continue to do that, and I hope that you will be a big part of that, Andre.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Question 8 from Councillor Garland regarding consultation on concessionary tram scheme. Councillor Garland.
Thank you. Are the council aware of how many passengers are unable who rely on concessionary tram scheme are unable to access the online consultation? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have to say, Councillor Garland's question is a bit of a strange one if you actually read it correctly, because obviously it would be impossible for us to be aware of the precise number of passengers that's unable to access our online consultation. Indeed, the same applies to anyone who wishes to take part in this consultation, because we don't know in advance exactly who will respond or exactly how many of those individuals don't have an internet connection or are unable to respond. Just to try and be helpful, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to try and sort of reinterpret Councillor Garland's question, and perhaps she was wanting to ask, what is the Council doing to ensure that anyone who is unable to access the online consultation can take part in other ways, and that nobody will be excluded from taking part?
That's a much better question. A much better question.
Thank you, Councillor Gurney. So, on that basis, I'll proceed to answer my own interpretation, if you like, Mr. Chairman. Ofcom figures released on the 23rd of November of this year show that around 93% of adults have access to the internet, but we are aware that not everyone can respond online. That's why we have measures in place to ensure that people without online access are not excluded from this and other consultations. Since Monday the 13th of November, printed copies of this consultation document have been available at all libraries across Nottinghamshire. All residents need to do is ask a member of library staff for a printed copy. And similarly, anybody wishing to take part in the consultation is welcome to phone the County Council on 0300 500 8080, where if they explain that they cannot access the online consultation, our customer service staff will assist in completing a consultation response, as is standard practice for any of our consultations. So, Chairman, nobody should feel unable to take part in this consultation. We want to hear the views of the Nottinghamshire public, and we will not be making any decisions on this matter until we have studied the consultation responses. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Garland, have you a supplementary question?
Yeah, thank you. I point out you probably know who actually has a concessionary fare. So I suggest you could have written to them. The council obviously wants to appear like Scrooge and run this consultation over Christmas, and I do hope that people who don't have access to the internet are aware they can go to the library, because I don't know how they'll find out. However, now that Councillor Bradley has now told us that as the mayor he wouldn't implement this scheme and the council won't be responsible for it, my supplementary question is, how much is this consultation costing the council, and how many hours of adult social care would it have paid for if it hadn't been run?
Thank you, Councillor Galland. Councillor Clark to reply.
Thank you, Chairman. Any changes that we have to make, we still have to consult, no matter what the changes may be. And I do want to just clarify, this consultation is not restricted. We don't say that only people who have a concession are allowed to respond to the consultation. As I said in my earlier question, anyone can be allowed to respond to this consultation. And in terms of costs, I'm happy to give her the exact figure. I will find out the exact figure and I will let her know. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Question 9 from Councillor Shaw regarding evening activities of young people in Hucknall. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Nottinghamshire County Council runs a bus for young people in Hucknall on Wednesdays. This gives young people access to a wide range of social and recreational activities, including music, dance, art, sports, adventures, etc., etc. Could the Cabinet member for young people of give assurances to the young people of Hucknall that the County Council will not be cutting this vital service in May 2025?
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Taylor to reply.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Shaw, for the question. Nottinghamshire County Council is in better financial shape than many other local authorities, but nevertheless it is a matter of public record that we all face significant pressures. In that context, we are currently reviewing all of the statutory and non-statutory services that we provide, as we do through our budget monitoring and development process every possible at those who most need our support. We will bring forward our budget proposals for 24-25 at the appropriate time next February. What I can say is that this administration has a track record of investing in services that proactively support the development of children and young people to give them the best start in life. We focus this investment particularly in areas of the county where financial or social deprivation are most severe, where a lack of such proactive and early intervention services might otherwise increase the risk of young people requiring more intensive and expensive support from this council and from other public service providers as they move into adulthood. Previous administrations have actively considered scrapping the mobile youth bus service. The Conservatives have sought to maintain and indeed to improve it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Shaw, we're just about out of time. Can you do a short supplementary?
Yes, absolutely. I really do thank you, Tracy, for that. On behalf of young people in Hucknall, given that we've got a major high incidence of STIs within young people within the county, the reassurance is very welcome. However, can you please ensure that the service is made available without charge when there are programmed events throughout Hucknall, including the town centre and in wards? And can you please also make sure that we've got some sort of support for young people during the summer holidays? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Taylor, can you do a short reply, please?
Thank you. I take it the specific reference was in respect of the support that comes with C cards and that kind of education. That's a core part of the youth service support offering. That's there already, and Councillor Carlton in his new portfolio role as public health and I will be working together on a lot of the joint work for children and young people, so that's assured. The services that we offer at the moment are a term time only service, you'll be aware of that. that is all part of the way that we continue to review the provision that we have for statutory and non-statutory provisions. As Conservatives, we will always aim to commit to delivering that service. We have to continue to review the service that we do provide. That's the best I can do for you today, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. There's no more time, but Councillor Hollis will get a written response about Venison and maintained schools. So we move on now to item 13. Please be aware that if we are to complete all business, we will need to start motion 2 by no later than 4:30 p.m. today. Motion 1. Nottinghamshire County Council's response to the flooding caused by Storm Babet. The Chairman calls Councillor Jason Zadrosny to move the motion. Councillor Zadrosny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To save some time, I'll move the motion as printed and then add some comments. Mr. Chairman, from the outset, I would like to acknowledge the work of officers at this council and, like their district, borough, parish and town council colleagues, emergency services and other key stakeholders, they went over and above the call of duty, and they have our highest praise in response to Storm Babet. The second named storm of the season saw torrential rain throughout Friday the 20th of October and into Saturday the 21st. It led to a major incident being declared across the county on Saturday. Storm Babet led to homes and businesses being flooded, road and school closures and people being rescued from their cars. The storm was described as unprecedented, once in a generation, the worst in living memory, except, Mr. Chairman, these words are used too frequently. Sometimes annually, or if you live in places like Retford, Sutton Junction, Hucknall, Plesley Square, Eastwood, Edwinstowe, Lamley and other areas where flooding happens so often now, residents have their own evacuation plans. Now, Mr. Chairman, councillors from all parties rolled up their sleeves, put on their wellies and helped with the efforts. Staff worked their socks off, as did many others. Communities came together and worked through the Friday and throughout the weekend to help impacted flood victims. As the motion states, Mr. Chairman, more than 900 Nottinghamshire homes were flooded during Storm Babet. Many of these residents were effectively homeless. However, we have grave concerns that Nottinghamshire, as the County Council, as the lead flood authority, who have the powers and statutory duties to manage and coordinate local flood risk management activities, were unprepared for Storm Babet. It didn't take a seasoned weather watcher or amateur meteorologist to know that Storm Babet was going to be severe. It had been on the news day before, and indeed I briefed my team at Ashfield District Council. We cancelled leave and brought in extra staff for the weekend. I appreciate that on Friday the 20th we saw complex and severe weather patterns. I appreciate that Nottinghamshire County Council needed to focus resource and response to the most pressing concerns, that being a danger to life. But the reality is that we weren't prepared adequately, Mr. Chairman. We further appreciate that Nottinghamshire County Council's duties as the lead flood risk authority to report individually on flooding incidents under Section 19 of the Flood and Water Management Act. Dozens of these investigations have now been launched. It is our belief that we need to undertake a full root and branch review of the overall processes and responsibilities of flood management across the county. The A617 Beck Lane near the Fox and Crown was closed in both directions due to severe flooding, with police on the scene. Yet just a few hundred metres away, a 322-home housing development has just commenced. That's after the government appointed a planning inspectorate and overturned a decision made by the district council. One of the main reasons we turned it down was concerns about flooding. Other stories of devastation were heartbreaking. Residents in Retford saw their homes being flooded yet again. One described the pain of standing in their living room in 3 feet of water, watching their valued possessions floating around their living room. They told reporters they thought they'd hit rock bottom, Mr. Chairman. That was until Brendan Clark-Smith turned up with a disastrous environment minister for a photo shoot, making the same old promises about flood mitigation while raw sewage flowed down their street and onto their driveways. Flooding in Sutton Junction saw many properties flooded, and my colleague, Councillor Matt Relf, said residents were left picking up the pieces of flooded homes. This was an extreme example of déjà vu for residents who were spared the humiliation of a visit by our MP. While they were fighting to keep water from flooding their homes, Lee Anderson was halfway through his stand-up comedy routine in front of Conservative members at a plush golf club in Coventry. In Hucknall, the problem was so bad, we even had to turn Hucknall Leisure Centre into an emergency evacuation centre. Residents on Greenwood Avenue and Addison Drive will tell us that they are considering legal action after their homes were wrecked during the floods. Other areas of Hucknall suffered devastating flooding, and areas surrounding Washdyke Lane, Watwell Road were so particularly impacted, while Ogle Street in the town centre became a river. Hucknall's Conservative MP Mark Spencer, an Environment Minister, so you would assume he was on the front line. Now, in the aftermath of Storm Babbitt, he was on a plane to speak at a meeting in Iowa. Mr. Chairman, Ashfield District Council, like other housing teams and community protection officers, visited tenants and private properties to identify any immediate risk or help with urgent needs. We also provided a roving waste collection team to targeted streets to allow flood-affected properties to dispose of damaged furniture. Like other councils, we did everything we could, Mr. Chairman, but our problems were exacerbated by failures of the County Council, as the lead flood authority, to provide us with an adequate number of sandbags, which impacted our preventative work. As the leader of the council, I had to personally intervene when I was so disappointed that Ashfield had been allocated 50 sandbags, less than 1 per 1,000 houses, and what became abundantly clear that the gullies and drains failed. Many areas flooded for the first time, with sewage backing up into residents' homes and on our streets and parks. This motion therefore requests a full review of gully cleaning across Nottinghamshire, including how often they are cleaned. We request that the placed select committee undertake a review, as it's clear we have a major problem, not helped by the County Council not having a regular enough grate and gully cleaning plan. So, I would challenge the council to undertake to clean every gully in this county by next year. We need to have a plan in place to minimise the impact of severe weather patterns like the ones we've seen. So what is clear, Mr. Chairman, is that we need to learn lessons from our response to Storm Babbitt. There were genuine mistakes that happened and a lack of preparation. And this council must learn to prevent this devastation for residents in the future. Mr. Chairman, I'm grateful that the Chief Executive and the three party leaders, at my request, will shortly meet to discuss an action plan, and that lessons need to be learned. And by voting for this motion today, members can ensure that those lessons are learnt for our residents. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Zabrosny. The Chairman calls Councillor Tom Hollis to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As this motion states, 65 locations across Nottinghamshire were impacted by the flooding of Storm Babbitt. This doesn't tell the whole story, though. As Councillor Zabrosny has stated, our county saw widespread flooding, and it will mean dozens of Section 19 reports will have to be sent to the Place Committee that I'm the Vice Chairman, following many investigations. What we need, Mr. Chairman, is a widespread, overreaching investigation into how we prepared for a storm that everyone knew would happen. We had days of notice, and it's hard not to come to the conclusion that we could have been better prepared. In Huthway, for example, on Common Road, Mill Lane, Blackwall Road, and many other locations, they were dramatically impacted. All the main arterial roads into our village were underwater. Emergency resurfacing had to take place on Blackwall Road due to the road surface being washed away. The businesses down there were dramatically impacted at the worst possible time. Ultimately, Mr. Chairman, Storm Babbitt will cost us millions. Unfortunately, Nottinghamshire County Council refused to come to my part of Ashfield after 11 a.m. on the affected day, which was Friday. I appreciate that we had to prioritise, but residents were shocked that after their pleas, and that their pleas were left unheard. Fortunately, Ashfield District Council stepped in, but we didn't have enough sandbags as they were kept by Nottinghamshire County Council. As the motion states, individual officers worked really hard. This motion certainly isn't a criticism of those officers. As the motion states, we thank council staff and their partners
and the partners, like district, borough and parish and town councils, and infrastructure such as utility companies and Severn Trent and National Highways. Many officers cancelled leave. Our staff team at County Hall took hundreds of calls, answered hundreds of messages and joined dozens of officers working hard over the weekend to combat Storm Babbitt. They filtered through complaints and dealt mainly with the worst possible ones. What this motion is about is process. There are many organisations that work together in times of flooding, but the lead flood authority, Nottinghamshire County Council, simply didn't act. We need to look at the basics, from our responsibilities in the planning process to gully cleaning. Let's look at the planning process in my division. Diggers, as we speak, are arriving on Ashland Road West in Huthwaite to start the process of building 300 homes. At Ashfield District Council, we turned down the application due to fears about flooding. Nottinghamshire County Council, as the lead flood authority, never objected once to this application. Not once, Mr. Chairman. Neighbours who live around Ashland Road West can expect more flooding as a direct result of the Conservative government appointed planning inspector overturning the democratic decision of our council. We turned it down 3 times over fear of flooding. All it took was the government approving it once. An ambitious impact, an obvious impact, was also the poor state of the gullies. Residents tell me that they blocked to the point of uselessness. That's why, as part of this review, we need to look at our gully cleaning process. The Place Select Committee can play a vital role in ensuring that this is carried out urgently, from frequency and quality of cleaning to ensuring we work with Severn Trent to fix broken gullies. Councillors from all sides will be aware of the blame game that exists in this county, where Nottinghamshire County Council blames Severn Trent and vice versa. A clear process of responsibility needs to be actioned so that we can do everything within our power to avoid flooding. This morning, Mr. Chairman, I travelled to County Hall via Common Road at 7:30 a.m. It was already flooded. We know where our flooding hotspots are. Some flood with only millimetres of rain. We need more. We need to do more. While Storm Babbitt was a tragedy for so many, we need to ensure that we've learnt lessons. The time to act, Mr. Chairman, is now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hollis. The Chairman calls Councillor Neil Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to propose an amendment to this motion, and if I could ask officers to circulate it, if I could ask your indulgence if I pause until they have the amendment in front of them, and I'll speak to it.
So you get 5 minutes to move it, 5 minutes to second it, and then we offer an adjournment to councillors across.
Councillor Clark, are you ready to propose the amendment?
Indeed. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. I hope everybody appreciates that we agree with the thrust of the motion, but there are some important tweaks and amendments which we wanted to put in. I agree with some of the comments that have been made, but I do also challenge some of the comments as well. And yes, it has been acknowledged that this event was unprecedented, and it really was unprecedented. It's easy just to say, yes, this has happened before, but the volume of water that came down in such a short period, it was getting on for 4 inches over the space of the couple of days. Is an immense, I don't know how many billions of gallons of water that is, but it's an immense amount across the county. To level accusations such as the council simply didn't act, that is very bad accusation indeed, because I want to pay tribute to the officers of this council and partners, but in particular, by saying the council didn't act, is not acknowledging. I'm not going to name specific names because there are a lot of them, but there are senior officers who spent hours, some of which were supposed to be on leave but came in to work, sometimes until midnight, answering a phone and getting up again at 3 o'clock in the morning to continue the response, working with partners. So it's really is very disingenuous to say that the council didn't act, because I really do want to thank all those, the highways teams, the flood teams, via so many people within the council. The issue of sandbags has been raised. Well, I know district councils that have considerable quantities of sandbags at their disposal for just such events, and I am told, Mr. Chairman, that the 50 sandbags that were delivered to Ashfield were what they requested. They asked for 50, and that's what I am told, Mr. Chairman, and that's what they received. So the focus is definitely needs to be on the most pressing concerns that occurred during the flood event, and reference has been made to Section 19 reports, and that's why we've put that into the amendment, because it's important that those Section 19 reports, 33 of them as it happens, so that's a lot of reports, they need to be acknowledged, as does the VIA response, and they were out working road closures, chopping up trees that had been blown down during the storm. There were so many different ways in which VIA and the council were operating, again partnering with the Environment Agency, and I indeed myself went up to Retford. I saw the state of the River Idle. It's not a question of the councils being responsible for the water on the roads. In various places, the rivers flooded. There are floodplains of rivers, and that's intentional, because when a river floods, the water needs somewhere to go. So I actually saw for myself, and I talked to some of the residents in Retford. I spoke to the emergency services, the Environment Agency, people who are operating the pumps, etc. In addition, the Severn Trent, where they have ownership of the sewage systems, then they are responsible for maintaining some of the systems, and in some cases the Canals and River Trust as well. And I also want to pay tribute, Mr. Chairman, we shouldn't forget volunteers, community flood wardens who assisted as well. So I think what's really important that we acknowledge that there were officers, local resilience forum and the emergency teams that were set up there and were doing a tremendous amount of work. In the space of 5 minutes, it's impossible to detail all the work that carried on. We really need half an hour to do it. Anyway, I move the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Cotty to second the amendment.
Happy to support the amendment, and I'll second it. Thank you, and reserve the right to speak.
Councillor Zadrazny, would you like an adjournment to consider?
We don't need an adjournment, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I know there's a penchant for pedantry across the way. I do think it's unnecessary as an amendment, but I'm happy to accept it. In doing so, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to read this though. On the 20th of October, which was after we'd been offered 50 sandbags, and I said, "Thank you. Can we arrange for our 4x4 teams, because we collected, they weren't delivered to us, to get out and collect another 250 bags urgently, please?" We were refused.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, the amended motion, Councillor Zadrosny has accepted it, so that is the substantial motion. That's what we're speaking of. So, go to Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you very much, Chair. May I first of all thank all the organisations that responded to the flooding all over Nottinghamshire. I think they did a very, very good job. It was over, of course, 3 eventful days. Pardon me. Having visited many of the properties affected in my area, it was pitiful to see the damage done to some of our houses and the state that the flooding had left them in. Most of the residents affected will not be able to return to their homes for many, many months. I fully support this request for a full review by the Nottinghamshire County Council Place Select Committee on the preparation for the response to the flooding caused by Storm Babette. But I'm also asking for a full investigation into the flooding on Greenwood Avenue and Redwood Court in Hucknall, when a 5-foot wave of water descended from Dobb Park across the Hucknall bypass and into the affected areas, demolishing a very, very large wall and lifting furniture in many of the homes across the room. It was devastating. How someone was not killed in that incident, I just can't think. And I hope, obviously, this will never happen again. There are lots of rumours circulating at present, and the residents are getting on to me substantially at the moment. They want to know the truth of the cause of such a deluge of rain all coming at the same time. We know a Severn Trent representative attended at the time, as they are responsible for the sluice gates on Dobb Park. Now the residents need answers, and they need answers quickly. I also hope and fully support a review of all our gullies cleaning across Nottinghamshire, because some of them were defective at that time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, can I thank the officers at this council, including our own staff team at the Independent Alliance, for giving up their weekend in the wake of Storm Babette, as well as volunteers and the emergency teams. Storm Babette has been described as unprecedented by this county council, but in reality, that is, for many residents, especially in Hucknall, flooding has become the norm. Areas like Ogle Street, St Patrick's Road and the centre of Hucknall resembled a river. Pupils at the Hillside Primary School were faced with a 4-foot barrage of water outside their school. It was a danger to life, Mr. Chairman. Now, as this motion states, we need a review of gully cleaning. I often report blocked gullies across Hucknall, and I've got to say, Mr. Chairman, that gullies that this council state to me that they've cleaned, when we went out and had a look, they're often still blocked with mud and they're not draining. There are many areas that suffer. Hucknall Road, which straddles Councillor Shaw's division and mine, is particularly bad. At the moment, it floods with just a few millimetres of rain. Flooding here is a weekly occurrence, and it puts residents in Hucknall's lives in danger. So, part of any review into Storm Babette, we need to go back to the drawing board. This council lets residents down and it causes chaos on our broken roads. There are queues on Nottingham Road and Ashgate Road where people were queuing in traffic for 3 hours plus and nothing was moving because of the storm. One of the issues in Hucknall is that our infrastructure cannot and does not cope with all the additional houses. That's why Ashfield District Council withdrew Wyburn Farm from its draft local plan. We simply could not cope with the volumes of new houses in any government's enforced housing plan where there was not an appropriate place to allocate houses. Storm Babette was terrible, but it was made far worse because of our poor infrastructure and poor gully cleaning record. I hope we can all work together to get this sorted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. The Chairman now calls Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It wasn't just the town centre that was affected by this storm, and indeed the storm's effects continue to blight the residents of Polperro Way. And only this week I rang up the County Council to help support the residents there to get more sandbags. Unfortunately, there were no sandbags available. Ring your district council. I rang the district council and I got a few sandbags that they had and I got them down there, but it wasn't enough. Officer went out on Tuesday and assessed the situation. I rang the officer. I said I need 100 sandbags to prevent this further flooding coming from the land at the back. And this is all due to Storm Babette. The land is saturated at the rear. The moment it rains, the water level table comes up and it comes into the houses at the back. Those houses are being flooded on a constant basis, and I fear that it's raining now, and I'm fearing that the water will be into the houses. I'm going to address the B6009, and I stress that this is closed on a regular basis. Since the 20th of October, I estimate the B6009 at Long Lane and on Lovesey Lane has been shut 10 times. This is causing danger to travellers on that road. I've highlighted this to highways over the last 2 years. In fact, I brought this to the fore on my very first constituency speech in this chamber over 2 years ago, highlighting this problem. I estimate that we've lost over £500,000 worth of vehicles on that road since the 20th of October. It's horrendous. On the night of the 20th, the road was blocked until midnight. I went up there at 11:30 and I couldn't get to the road. I had to park my car on Nabs Lane. I walked up the road, and there I could not believe my eyes. People were trying to drive through 3-4 feet of water with cars abandoned all over the road. Vehicles, BMWs, vans, you name it, they were blocked. I rang the police. I said, can you please come out and close the road, because nothing had happened. We cannot come out and close the road because we have nobody available to do so. The road was closed the following day. I've mentioned this before. The road is unlit. It's a 50-mile-an-hour approach. It's downhill. It swings left and right and blind bends. You approach that particular gully that rises to a crest, so it ends up in a bowl. So what you've got is a perfect storm. You arrive in that particular, and you've got nothing but water in front of you. It's not lit. I can't believe that we've not done nothing about it. Combine that with abandoned cars in front of you, and you don't know the road's going to be flooded, or there's an abandoned car in there, someone is going to lose a loved one. And I have photographs that absolutely will blow your mind. I've raised this many times with Via. I would like something doing to that road as soon as possible. And Greenwood Vale. I cannot believe what I saw in Greenwood Vale. I was down there with Councillor Wilmot on the Saturday. People were devastated. District Council did what it could, fantastic job. Getting hold of officers, brilliant. Sandbags, non-existent, nothing. And all we could do was go down there and sympathise with residents. And it was absolutely heartbreaking. And I just want to make sure that you're aware of the dangers of that road. The people have suffered. We need to stop. There needs to be addressed. So I will be supporting any motion that comes to this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. The Chairman now calls Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. This is something that kind of hit me hard. I kind of realised my role as a councillor when this storm came, more so than ever. I've got residents on Roby Drive, Friar Road, and around the estate on Coach Drive, and I saw and felt exactly what they were going through at that moment in time. I was up to my waist in water. I was helping residents evacuate. Most of them residents have still not returned to their homes. Perhaps they were uninsured. Perhaps the insurance has taken longer. Lots of things that could have perhaps been prevented. What I'm finding about this council, and why I fully support this motion, is that this council isn't proactive. Perhaps this side of the chamber is proactive, but that side of the chamber not so much. I find that this council is extremely reactive. Did I see anybody from the county council when I was up to my waist in water? Is that my role? No. Do I have a duty? Yes. My question is to this council, and when the county council came out, and when they came out, which was last week, which is obviously considerably amount of time, the officer described it. I commend everybody that has been out and involved. Milan Radulovic on the side of Labour, fantastic support from the borough. The county council, I'm left with my head in my hands when they're asking me, this has happened for years. Don't give me this once in a lifetime thing that's happened. This happens all the time. And that is because the people sat on that side of the bench are reactive and not proactive. We could have prevented this. We could have made measures that made... I'm sorry, Mr. Neil Clark, MBE. You haven't been down there. You didn't see. So don't sit there and laugh at the state that my residents have been through.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
You weren't there. I was. Carrying old ladies. What's the point of order?
Point of order is, how does he know I didn't go there? Because I went round the county, and also just be aware that I went round the county and I saw many places that were flooded.
So can you confirm, did you come to Eastwood? Exactly. Either way, we don't need to... Yeah, well, don't laugh and I won't shout. How does that sound? Yeah, because you weren't there. Okay? Mr. Chairman, please, can I continue? Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. So, yes, I do show my gratitude to those that turned up and got up and supported, especially those from the borough. From the county, I saw nobody until afterwards. And I thank the officer who came out, and he put something very, very bluntly to me. He put, we're going to do a Section 19 report, but it's very basic. It's very basic. So my residents, and that came directly out of the words of the officer that attended, very basic. So my residents are going to get it wasn't our fault. Well, quite frankly, I don't stand for that. So I support anything that is going to improve that. And that is why I support this motion that's been put forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. The Chairman calls Councillor Henshaw.
Thanks, Chair. I rise to support the substantive motion. In fact, we in the Labour group are going to support the original motion, but we can also support the substantive motion. And as you all know, I like to bring stories to this council that's of good news and interesting events. We all know that Storm Babbitt was a one-off in relation to the amount of rain and the devastation that it caused. Rivers, due to the Environment Agency's lack of maintenance or cutting back on their maintenance of river courses, rivers like the Meaden in Plesley, the Morn in Mansfield, running into the Titchfield Park, all overflowed the banks, and no amount of sandbags would have prevented the devastation. But what it did show to me was that out of that devastation, out of that adversity, in a strange way, it brought people together. People in Plesley coalesced around each other, supported each other, helped each other. The county council and other agencies were perhaps caught unawares, but the people rallied around each other and supported each other, and subsequently have set up events, fundraising events, to ensure that the people that were flooded out can access money. Together with the district councillor, Sharon Hartson, we were down at Meaden Square, and the water wasn't quite 4 foot deep, but it was quite high as it was coming over from the dam. And it took us a while actually to get the road closed, because nobody seemed to know who responsibility. The police wouldn't come and do it, the fire services couldn't do it. The bus came round the corner from Chesterfield Road and got stuck in the water. I decry BMW drivers, but a BMW came round the corner at 100 miles an hour, hit the water and stopped straight away, caused a problem. But what it did show that what we need to do is work together as a council, opposition and the majority group, to make sure that when situations like this arise, we work together. So I welcome a review on gully cleaning. Only this last week, when we had another amber warning about the River Meaden coming up and possibly flooding again, I said to myself, the people at the county, the flood people, the highways agency know that that area has been flooded a few weeks before. All the silt and rubbish came out of the river and blocked those drains up. So, to me, it makes logical sense that when you've had a flooding event, the first drains that you go to unblock are the drains that have been silted up due to the previous flood. That would then make it a lot easier to make sure that the water runs off. So, all I'm saying is it's about forward planning and not about reacting. But I've discussed this with the residents. They were quite satisfied that when we referred them to the county council in relation to the funds that were available that they could apply for, and I urged the council or the officers that are dealing with those applications to get through them very quickly, because as you know, there was an initial 150, a business could get 500, then there was £5,000 coming in relation to making their properties resilient to future flooding. But it's going to have a cost on this council, because that 5,000 don't go anywhere near in making properties flood resistant in the future. So it's going to have an effect. Yes, thank you. So anyway, and I value the community volunteers, and the county council have already set up examples and are recruiting people to be flood wardens. So everybody's working together. Let's look at the situation. Let's look at the situation in relation to global warming, because that's the major issue, because we're undoubtedly going to get more and more storm babettes. But I support the motion, the substantive motion. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henshaw. The Chairman calls Councillor Lee.
Chairman, thank you. I just want to get my notes out because I just want to note something. As we're talking, there are 41 flood warnings nationally with 148 flood alerts. That is happening at the moment as we're talking about flooding. I do take offence by some saying that our officers in the council didn't react, because they did react. The one thing that actually brought, and I'm being honest, it actually made me upset when I was literally out doing a road closure. I had no coat on because I literally was driving and got a phone call to a tree came down in Coddington. I was out doing a road closure. Somebody brought me a coat while I was waiting for officers to attend. Councillor Darby was out in Coddington putting out sandbags, and every single councillor, my WhatsApp was pinging off, was out and about. Every single councillor was about. Officers were about. I was out doing a road closure for about an hour and 40 minutes, 2 hours, and officers came from district and county. What did they say? You wait for a bus all day and two come along at the same time. But it just goes to show that they were out with their chainsaw, taking down the tree, removing it and reopening that road as quick as they could. And that wasn't just happening in Coddington, wasn't just happening in Bolton, it was happening across the county. Our officers were going above and beyond to the point where I had to stop and think and have a little prayer, because I thought, we're going to lose an officer today. Our officers were putting their lives at risk, making sure that residents were safe. And I think we do need to take a little step back when we're criticising the council, because tonight, when we're all at home in bed, our officers will be back out on the floods across Nottinghamshire and across the county council, again putting their lives at risk. So I get you're making political digs. However, make political digs at us, because that's what we're paid for. Don't have a criticism at our officers, please.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. The chairman calls Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I support both amendments really, because they both get, I don't believe though, to the nitty gritty, because I'm going round with the Environment Agency on Wednesday and taking them round, because I live 10 yards from where it flooded. Wellington Street, West End Street, Bailey Street and all that totally flooded. All my neighbours and all that. My wife was on duty, I was working for the King, but eventually I got there. But I think we need to go deeper, and start having enforcement. Because some of the land, needs tidying up, the gullies through under all the railways and all that. It's not allowing the flow of water. And I know it was way over what we've had for years, but we need to be looking at enforcing it. And that needs to come through Councillor Bradley and the government. Because we've got to do something, because every town, hamlet in the country is going to end up with the same. But somebody, and it's got to be the government, I'm not with political points, it don't bother me, the residents do. But somebody has got to take the bull by the horns and make a decision. If we're going to devolution, so there's Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. We're both on the same border. Erewash runs straight down the middle. Let's have somebody or some people to make the decisions that everybody knows what's going off. And we all know who's doing what. The police, the fire brigade were fantastic. The residents. Well then, we've all forgot about them again. Because it might happen again. As Councillor Lee says, it might happen tonight. Our officers will be at, but there's still no plan. It could be the gullies. It could be this. It could be planning. But we've got to be able to enforce it. And if we don't, with climate change, it's going to happen again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath. The chairman now calls Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I'd just like to rewind 4 years ago when we had another storm of similar capacity, and in Jacksdale, 14 houses got flooded on Main Road. And I think there's three facets to this, and one is forward planning, one is gully cleansing, and one is actual planning. So forward planning is we all, as councillors, we all know where the flooding is coming from, where it happens. We all know where it happens. So what happened 4 years ago, we got 14 properties flooded. I worked meticulously with the flood risk management officer, Ross, who was absolutely great. He got 14 of the houses. They got all flood defence systems put in. Between the neighbours, we all mapped out where the gullies were, because literally you just have to pull the manholes up and it just disappeared like a bath. All of the farmers around me, I've been to see them all, because when we're talking about forward planning, we're talking about, I'll say this to you a lot because there's a few of you with tractors over there. So riparian ownership on dikes, on land, is a major thing, and especially across Southall and Loudham in particular. and all over the county. So riparian ownership, and Councillor McGath's quite right, because enforcement is what's needed on those farmers, because it's not really a big ask. We had some parish council owned land halfway up a hill, believe it or not, on Station Road, and within a week we cleaned the dyke out. And this Monday, when the snow thawed and the rain came, and the neighbour who was on Station Road rang me up and he said, "Brilliant, Dave, it's gone," because we cleaned the dyke out. And the Great Gullies used to be maintained by the district and boroughs, and that, when it transitioned into the county council's highways departments, that local knowledge has been lost. So Ashfield used to do the maintenance of the dykes and the drains and the gullies, and then the county council took over it. Now, when Councillor Cotty and Councillor Wheeler were on highways in the last term before this one, where we're sat here, came in all the officers, and we had a massive, the slideshow, the one that sends you to sleep, right? On the gully cleansing system, because it's contracted out, right? Now, I said at the time they only clean 80% of the gullies every 3 years, something like 10% every 2 years and 10% every year. Now that really particularly needs focusing upon, and it could be through white space and through digital technology, because we've got that availability. We know where the floods are, and we just need a bit of pairing up. So we do need a review, and that's why we do need a review, because if we paired up those where it floods and where it's happening, because the catchment areas for some of these rivers are huge. I mean, I live in Underwood, and Jacksdale's 2.5-3 mile away through the valley of Bagthorpe, and I haven't seen Bagthorpe flooded for 15 years, and it was flooded last week when Storm Babbitt come. So you can see the capacity of water. The other side to it is, of course, as well, which a couple of my colleagues have alluded to, is planning. So planning, right? So we've heard Councillor Drosny say, and you'll laugh at us about the local plan, and the reason for Ashfield's catastrophic local plan, is because the previous administration did such a crap job on consulting. Well, during the election campaign in 2018-19, nobody wanted the houses there, because it's the same old. Everybody needs somewhere to live, but nobody wants them near them. And I'm sorry, but the previous administration put thousands of houses where nobody wanted them, and that's why we had a new local plan. So let's take, for example, another reason to that. Beck Lane, where there's 320 houses, we didn't put them there because it floods. Ashland Road, where there's now been on appeal to the government, right, because that's the way it is. We turn it down at district, they pass it at government, right? And Ashland Road's another 320 where it floods, and we didn't want them, but they're being built now, today. And earlier on this year, I heard at the Local Government Association in Bournemouth, Angela Rayner and Michael Gove both say we're building 300,000 houses a year. And when they write to the local flood authority, like they've just done about a settlement for 80 houses in Jacksdale, the flood authority haven't objected whatsoever. So if we turn it down and they win on appeal, we lose all the peripheral benefits. You all know what I'm talking about, the 106 and all that. So we've passed it. We've sent it to be taken out of green. And that flooded horrendously this week. And I lobbied the flood risk officer to put his complaints in. Sorry, Chair, but that's it. I lobbied him to not let that happen, and he did.
Councillor, the Chairman calls Councillor Girling.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I'm really pleased that Councillor Park mentioned them first, is flood wardens. I think it's really important that we mention flood wardens, and that actually I'm quite disappointed that they're not specifically mentioned in the motion, but I accept it just say partners.
Community volunteers.
Yes, I know that, but flood wardens, and some of you might not know what flood wardens are, because if you've got flood wardens and you're prepared as a district council as well as a county council and have flood wardens, they have enough sandbags already, because they know what it's like, because they're regularly flooded. And Councillor Oliver was going on about being proactive, not reactive. Standing in water up to your waist is reactive. Planning beforehand so that you've got flood wardens
So if you've got sandbags in areas where it always floods, which you've all admitted to, that's proactive. So if you look at Nottinghamshire, for example, every village where there's a flood issue have got flood wardens, and they had enough sandbags and did everything they needed to do during those floods. Okay, and just to say that Babbitt wasn't unprecedented, 50 roads were closed. 50.
We've got a point of order, Councillor Gilling. What is the point of order, Councillor?
It just holds my time, doesn't it?
Sorry, Councillor Gilling, but Councillor Oliver's only been the councillor for a year, so he didn't have any prior experience or knowledge of that flooding.
Well, then he shouldn't have mentioned the fact that it flooded before, should he? He did actually say it flooded before. So anyway, I'm speaking now.
Carry on, Councillor Girling.
Thank you. So if you look at a well-run district council, they have flood wardens, and they've placed all the villages that have flooded in the past, or where there's areas that flood. I was very fortunate. Yeah, where I represent as a county council, the worst I had was a lay-by where it's next to a shops where people had to get out of their cars into a puddle. That's all that happened in mine. I was very fortunate. But however, I was actually contacted by Girton Parish Council because they was having some issues with their escape route. So, I phoned up, and this is how good the council was. I phoned up the council and said, look, they've got an escape route and it's full of bushes and edges and things like that need to be trimmed. They got hold of somebody in Ollerton, a farmer in Ollerton, that drove his tractor from Ollerton to Girton. Now, if you don't know where Girton is, it's between Newark and Gainsborough on the A1133. It's about halfway. Long way for somebody to come from Ollerton. They then cleared that so people could escape if they needed to. They were very calm about it. Oh, we're used to this. That's what happens if you get prepared, proactive, not reactive, in an area where it floods. And that's what you should be doing, not calling for 50 sandbags or 200 sandbags on the day. It should actually be in position already. It should be in position now in case it floods. So it's called, yeah. Hang on, excuse me, I never interrupted any of you. No, I didn't. Oh, we're keeping my time holding while they do this. Thank you. So it's about actually being proactive, Councillor Oliver. Maybe you should look that word up in the dictionary, understand what it actually means. Point of order. Hang on.
Sit down, Councillor Girling, till order's restored. Right. Can we have order, please? Because we can't continue, and if we're going to shout the speakers down. We've got 10 people who have indicated to speak, and we're going to have to wrap it up shortly. Councillor Girling, will you continue?
How long have I got, Chairman, left? 2 minutes. Lovely. Thank you. So as I was saying before I was rudely interrupted, it's about being proactive. It's about getting those things in place. So if you haven't got these flood wardens, what I suggest you do as a councillor is get them sorted out. Get your volunteers, because I can assure you there's enough people in those areas that will volunteer to be flood wardens. I was also talking to one of the flood wardens in South Scarl who contacted me because they needed help and I was free, so I went to help them. They're there and they're really calm about it because they're used to dealing with it, because it's common, they're used to it and they know exactly what to do. And that's what you need to get in position. Now, how many roads need to be cleared? How many signs do we need? How many police officers do we need for a storm like that to be able to close roads? It's very difficult. Loads and loads of roads. Some roads were closed halfway down, which caused all sorts of problems, because then traffic's getting halfway on that big road, that A1133, and then going through all the little villages that haven't been flooded. We've got Arctics there. So there's, people are ignoring the road closure signs. They can't account for that sort of ignorance, really, of just ignoring the road closure sign and going down there and then finding out you can't go anywhere. And that's what we need to do, really, is get our act together proactively, getting ready for this sort of thing. Because, whether you believe in global warming or not, if it's going to happen, then we should be ready for it and should flood wardens like they do in a proactive council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Girling. Councillor Guilfoyle.
Before Thank you, Chairman. Actually, I'm glad I followed Keith, because sometimes you can't be proactive, Keith. There are areas in Worksop that flooded in 2022, never flooded before. So you can't just say we're going to have sandbags here and there. There are places that flood, never flooded before, and you're stuck with it. So yes, it's not an easy solution. We down in the north are quite a considerable way from some of the areas where sandbags are stored, etc. And as you quite rightly said, you could be putting officers at risk just getting sandbags that are needed to the people that are flooded. And some of our officers will probably try and get out of their own homes to respond, can't do that either. So it's always difficult around times like that. I just want to say, from my point of view, I support the resolution, what's here tonight, the motion that's here, but also flood wardens. We've got some brilliant flood wardens in Worksop, not enough, we need more. But clearly people are sometimes a little bit afraid about coming forward and taking on a role like that. Some of our flood wardens this time, when it flooded, did get a lot of verbal abuse for stopping vehicles coming through. And, we're used to dealing with sometimes verbal abuse. They're not, and they don't like it, and it puts some of them off. But they do need a lot of praise. And our officers who have worked at training those individuals have put a lot of time in, and that is some of the proactive stuff that the county council's been doing. And I don't want to be negative in any way, other than to say that Worksop is fed up. The victims of Worksop, the businesses and the people that are living there, are getting fed up because there's no solution coming forward. I have been to a number of meetings with the Environment Agency, and they've done the models since the 5-6 years ago when the original really bad flood that we had, the one that said it was going to be 1 in 100 years, and it turned out to be something like 1 in 250, 300 years when the library and everything flooded. And we've had 2 or 3 since that time where Worksop's flooded subsequently. And they want solutions. But unfortunately, the what's being put to me is the solutions, and they've got some. Some of them they can't give you guarantees on, and I think other areas that have had work done flooded this time. And they'll be saying to us, you've spent all that money on flood defences, and we've still flooded. That's a difficulty. But when you're told by the Environment Agency, we've got some solutions, but the solutions are that much financially that actually they don't meet the cost-benefit analysis. So therefore, we've got a town that is virtually, in my opinion, written off. Because the solution is going to cost that much that they're prepared to sit back and say, well, it's about 70, possibly 18 million pounds each time it floods, and the cost is 100, probably. Flood a few more times before we break even, get onto that. It's not acceptable. The solutions have got to be found, and it's, cleaning the gullies and everything else, that's part of the problem in some areas, but in others, it is the River Ryton. It needs works doing. It needs the whole of the town centre redeveloping. It needs some of the solutions that they've come up with that you can't mention because clearly they don't want to go into a lot of it. But there are solutions that they've got, but it needs that money spending. So my plea to people, because I've been sat in a meeting with the MP who went and sat there and he was going, oh, well, I said, well, hold on a minute. This isn't a county council issue. This isn't a district council issue. This is a government issue. Go away and get it sorted. Now, it's not coming forward. That money is not coming forward. So, tonight, as has been said, I'm looking at the flood as it's rising. Worksop again could flood, and we've got no solution. So, we need to look at that, but we also need to get round the table and get some of those problems that can be resolved, but will cost a lot of money. I accept that, but they need to do it.
30 seconds, Councillor.
Yeah, because otherwise we're just going to be continuing. You're going to make them places where people cannot live, full stop, because they're so afraid because it's going to flood again.
Thank you, Councillor Guilfoyle. Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to diminish the devastation of flooding because we all recognise that because we've all had it in all our wards and and divisions. But this time, Storm Babette, I was very fortunate within the Ollerton division. I had 2 homes severely affected with elderly people in which was devastating, as always is. But to the point as well, I had a field full of animals, which, I mean, for those of you that travel to Holland, you've gone past the field and seen the horses. And Maggie does a brilliant job in looking after these horses. The impact on her has been huge. Not only financially, because she's trying to do some further preparation work. It is called Moor Meadow, so we're aware that it's a floodplain. But the severity of what came down in Storm Babette, animals were only saved because of the volunteers and the honesty and openness of people that could offer support in transporting these animals away from a situation that they didn't want to be in. The animals are back. Maggie's out now, looking after the animals. I've just spoke to her, she's out now, because the River Moor is just flooded. Either sides of the 614 at Ollerton Island are swimming pools. In fact, they're lakes. They're not swimming pools, they're lakes. It hasn't gone away. You'll know that, Scott. It hasn't gone away. It's there. So, as much as I would ask within any review that happens, I would ask for consideration of people who are in floodplains who are providing a fantastic service that just need a little bit more, because we all got this caught with pants down. There's no question about that with this. When this came down harder than we'd anticipated. A little bit more warning so that we can plan better, and that is in this amendment, and I appreciate that. I take that on board. And I would like to follow up to thank officers and volunteers across our county, because, you know, I'm mentioning Maggie. She's been in constant contact with our flood officers, who have tried their best to help her out. But it's not a house share. She's not looking for funding to support a business in any way or to support a charity in any way. But she doesn't qualify for any of the funding that we can offer. But she provides a brilliant service. So when we come to look at the review, please take that into consideration, whoever's carrying it forward, that there are incredible people out there who do incredible work that aren't living in a house but do provide a service that really needs support. Thank you, Chair.
The Chairman calls Councillor Morton.
Yeah, I've been involved in flooding as long as I can remember. The first time I came on the issue was in North Nottingham when the floodwater was lifting up into some properties in the south of North Nottingham, and I was an Environment Agency representative on the Trent Flood and Regional Coastal Committee for 8 years, and I was also on the Water Forum for 4 years. I was also part of a group that formulated the 2010 Flood and Water Act and set up the lead local flood authority. The big problem is that a lot of you are blaming the county council as the lead local flood authority. Unfortunately, the lead local flood authority does have clout, it does have powers, but it has no money. And it was initially given 290,000 to employ some flood wardens in 2012, Richard, something like that, 2012, 2013. And so we used that money and then set up the flood wardens, and that's really our contribution goes into setting that. Well, there's a few real issues that what I can do from my experience. By the way, we sorted North Nottingham about 8 years later with £70,000 bond put on to be able to protect those properties, and they didn't get flooded and Storm Babette. I represented Southall, for example, when it was flooded in 2013. It had 92 mil in an hour and a half. Well, this time Storm Babette in the same area delivered 121 mil in just under 36 hours. So it gives you an idea of the scope of what was happening. But since the 2013 the Southall community has come together to sort out their problems. There were 10 properties got flooded actually in areas we've never had flooding before, and we're going to be looking into those areas. But in 2013 we had 125 properties flooded and 16 businesses, and we had 500 people turn up to the first flood meeting, and they recognised as a community the only way to sort it was to sort it themselves. They've got a fantastic flood warden scheme. They were constantly lobbying me because I'm the Trent Region Flood and Coastal Committee, and we managed to get £6.3 million to be able to sort out that part, and it worked. It worked. You know, I represent Farnsfield as well. Farnsfield had interior sewage flooding in the 2013 event, and the community got together and we got in touch with Severn Trent, and we got 1.4 million to put a attenuation container underneath the Lion pub. Saved every property. They rang me up, the residents did, after Storm Babe, and went, "Thank you very much, Bruce. You know, thank you very much for all you've done. You've literally stopped this happening." It can be done, but it takes community input. It's got to come from the community. It can't come from the county council. The county council cannot afford to go down the route. Now, some of the issues you've been talking about today, gullies. It's a classic example. We blame gullies. Well, I tell my residents that riparian owners are releasing water onto the highway system, and the gullies are only there to cope with what is on the highway. It's the riparian owners that are responsible for the flooding, not Nottinghamshire County Council. And then you turn around and you end up with a bow wave coming through and it floods all the property. I've got properties with flooding coming up through the floor. You know, in Sutton-on-Trent, I've got nine villages that were affected by this recent event. But every single one of them, I'm going to every single one of us. One last night, I was with Ross, actually, in Headingley last night, and we were talking community. How can we solve this as a community? We can help, but we can't pay for it. This is what Jason Dudrosny, where he's got it completely and utterly wrong. He is expecting the state to sort it out. Well, actually, it doesn't work like that. And these communities are coming to me, Doctor, we've got a consultant who floods. He's flooded 4 times in the last 10 years. And he's put solid floors all in his house. And he stopped me as I'm leaving the meeting. He said, "Do you know something, Bruce? I missed one bit. And it caused damage in my house. But I'm going to sort it this time." And that is the way forward. What you've got to do is, I'm more than happy to help anybody. And the Southall Flood team will help anybody deliver for their communities. But you start saying, me, as far as the authorities are concerned, and you will get absolutely nowhere. Yeah, right. My advice to you is form your flood forums, get out there and be proactive in your communities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be brief in my comments. There's been a lot of talk tonight about being proactive rather than reactive, and that it's not the county council's responsibility to fix all the flooding issues. Well, the particular issue that I'm going to speak about, Mr. Chairman, is entirely the county council's fault. There was a planning application in my division which we refused planning permission for. The county council backed us up at the time, and they said no to the planning application. They said no. The day before the hearing started at Ashfield District Council, they changed their mind because the developer offered them more money. They said, "If we do this to the road, it'll fix the problem. You won't have any flooding issues." So they removed their objection to it the day before the hearing started. The officers that came to the hearing had never even been to the site. They looked at it on a map. They'd never been to the site. Now, that planning permission got approved by the inspector, and ever since that, every single time it rains, that road floods. Beck Lane floods. It's been shut by the police 3 times in the last month, and it never flooded before that planning started. Those houses started being built on Beck Lane. So that is entirely down to the removal of the objections from Notts County Council. The inspector even said that if the county council had kept their objection in, it would have been refused. So it's entirely down to the county council. So yes, we do need ways to move forward. We do need ways to fix that. But you can't just say it's got nothing to do with us, because that is entirely our fault on that one. But, Mr. Chairman, I will say that I do say it's the officers on that. The officers on the day, I'm not going to take anything away from them. What they did on that day, they did some fantastic work. Not only the officers here, the officers of the district council, volunteers across the county, the emergency services did a fantastic job to keep the county moving as best as it could. I'm not taking that away from anybody. But we can't just say that it's not the county council's fault and turn our backs and walk away, because we created this problem on Beck Lane. So we've got to find a way to fix it. And I'll just finish off, Mr. Chairman, with one last thing. Is we keep hearing that Storm Babette was a one-off, it was a one-off, it was a one-off. But how many more times is it going to be a different storm that's a one-off? With the massive changes that we've got, with the climate changes at the moment, we don't know when the next massive storm's going to be. We've had storm after storm after storm. We can't just keep using the excuse it was a one-off, because next month there could be another one. The month after that, another one. We can't keep using the same excuse. We've got to find a way to move forward and stop the massive impacts that these storms are having. We're never going to fix the problem entirely. There's always going to be flooding in certain areas, because we can't stop rivers bursting their banks. It's an impossibility. But we need to find a way to move forward to make things better, to minimalise the damage that it causes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Cotter, you've reserved your right to speak. Do you wish to speak now?
All I want to say, Chairman, is that we've gone across the board by all sides. They've all had a say. I think the motion that we've got going forward is the right thing to do. As Councillor Martin mentioned, when I was in control of some of this, it is a very sad time when you go up and visit people who've had their houses flooded. So I think this is a very important thing to take forward. So that's where I sit with it.
Thank you, Councillor Cotter. Councillor Zad Rosny, do you wish to sum up?
Well, I think I will. Thank you, Chair. Chairman, look, I'm pleased we've had a good debate on this. I mean, I'm a little surprised it's got so heated, because one of the things I do really dislike about this chamber is when we talk for over an hour on something we all agree on. So I think well, we agree with an awful lot. So I think I'll start with that. I wrote some comments down that I probably won't read now because they were rather churlish, feeding back on some things. But I think it's useful for us to summate in a way that recognises the stuff we do agree on, and that includes some of the learning that needs to happen. So I think it's incumbent on us, firstly, to continue to make sure, and I'll say this for Councillor Lee, whatever he's doing, I'm not sure, that nobody from any side of the chamber cast any aspersions on any officer, and I think they are deserving of our highest praise, and we continue to do that. Not just at this place, but that every council across the county, every tier, and the volunteers that helped. Councillor Lee, just remind me of that Dick Emery character. What's that one where he kept saying, I got it wrong again. Bother boy, you've got to stop it, Jono. Nobody was saying what you were saying. People were praising across the board our officers, and I wouldn't want it to get out of this chamber that anybody thought anything other than the highest regard.
Be careful what to say
there. Councillor Clark, just for clarity, because I don't want to argue about sandbags anymore, I've emailed you that email chain, which shows what we did ask for. And not for anything other than, I think we need to learn from that. If there was an issue about it, and your side saying this and my side saying that we sort of bottom that out, and we have the clarity of who has the resources, when they're needed, and at what time. I wasn't in the room, but I was listening to Councillor Lawton's oration as it was. And I think one of the things we've got to get away from is this sort of abdication of responsibility. We agree, and It's impossible for anybody not to agree that the County Council is the lead flood risk authority, and that's including planning and everything else that and enforcement and regulations and everything else that goes with it, and that the County Council can't abdicate that responsibility. And part of the learning must be that there's always room for improvement. And I don't want to say failures, but 900 homes were flooded, and every single one of those is a tragedy for that family. Every single one of them. And we all agree on that as well. So, and I'm not naive enough, as no member is, to think that we could stop that day one. We will build flood defences outside of everywhere, because it is unprecedented to this level. But that unprecedented behaviour in weather patterns is becoming something that happens more and more often. So we need to prepare in a different way and a better way. And I'll take comfort that we have an amended motion that we all agree on, that the Chief Executive, the leader, and Councillor Fowler and I think it's the 21st, are meeting this month to discuss other routes, and that it will go to the Place Committee. So I'll conclude on that. There are a number of things we agree on, but we must agree that there's always learning in every walk of life, in every service that we provide, and in some areas people will fail because they wouldn't have had water in their living room otherwise. So let's come together when we can, which is not that often, and have some unanimity in this room to try and reduce that possibility happening as much as is possible. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for a debate where everybody actually did agree on the substantive parts of it, and I commend it to the Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rosny. So the amended motion, as we've said, is a substantive motion, and we are now moving to the vote. So all those in favour? Right, okay. Any against? No, so that's unanimous. Thank you everyone for attending today, and those viewing on the line. Do remember that we've got the Chairmens draw on the 18th of December, and there's drinks afterwards. So do come along for that and buy a ticket for the Chairmens charity. Happy Christmas to everybody if I don't see you before. So we can now stop the broadcast. The meeting is closed.